Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Board Secretary on February 15th, 2022 in the following manner. Posted notice on the school bulletin board at the Administration Building, transmitted to the Courier Post, Philadelphia Inquirer, and the Clerk of Cherry Hill Township. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Sugars, would you do roll call, please?
Mrs. Arroyo,
Here.
Mrs. Stratton, Mrs. Fleischer,
Here.
Ms. Friedel,
Here.
Mr. Mayor,
Here.
Dr. Rude,
Here.
Ms. Stern,
Here.
Mrs. Tong, Mr. Avadia.
Here. We'll start off with a board recognition. Dr. Meloche.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. I'm very excited this evening. This is one of my favorite activities that we do each year at our board meetings, either at the end of February or at the beginning of March, where we work with one of our community partners in the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association. Cherry Hill African American Civic Association, which is one of the oldest civic associations here in town. They're also one of the longest standing donators of scholarships to our graduating seniors each year. They run a program for Black History Month each year that has grown into an essay and video and poster contest for students across the district and across the grade levels. So I'm very excited tonight to welcome representatives from the Civic Association to present the people that placed and won this year. For those of you that are watching online or were here in the all-purpose room, there's been a slideshow that's been rolling since before the meeting began. So you could see who did, which projects placed in terms of what went on. So I'm very excited to introduce the president of the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association, Ms. Tina Truitt, and the person each year that runs this incredible program, Ms. Kathleen Jenkins. So ladies, if you'll meet me up at the podium.
The Reverend Ivan George essay poster video contest theme this year was the impact of the healthcare system on African Americans and famous African Americans in healthcare. This contest is sponsored by the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association and the Cherry Hill Public Library. We had almost 200 entries this year from 8 schools in the district from all grade groups, kindergarten through 12th. Below is the list of winners.
From kindergarten, first place is Amir Austin from Woodcrest School. Her subject was Myra Logan. Second place, Lindsay Langman from Johnson. The subject was Rebecca Lee Crumbler. Third place, K through 1, was Sana Hamashido. I think I might have misspelled that, but anyway, from Kilmer, and Patricia Bath was the subject of her poster. Second and third, first place was Banag Dang from Kilmer. The poster was James McClure Smith. The second place was Chloe Turner from Kilmer, and she depicted Mae Jameson. Second and third, we had 3 third place ties. Autumn Trinidad from Kilmer, Patricia Bath was her subject. The second third place winner was Olivia Field from Kilmer, and she did Mary Fitzbutler Waring. The third place winner from Kilmer was Jackson Baver, and he did Mae Jemison. Fourth and fifth grade, first place, Ava Esposito, and she was from Barton. Her subject was Alice Ball. Second place, fourth and fifth grade, Xavier Austin from Woodcrest, James McClure Smith. Third place, fourth and fifth grade, Lena Karima from Kilmer. Her subject, Rebecca Cole. The sixth and seventh grade winners, we had first place and second place. First place was Nicholas Abdallah from Rosa, James McClure Smith, and second place was Nimdi Tarrant from Carusi. Rebecca Lee Crumpler was her subject. The eighth, ninth grade winners, first place, Lena Gross from Rosa, Rebecca Cole was her subject. Second place, eighth and ninth, Naresh Vasudevan from Rosa. He did a really heart-wrenching video. His subject was Solomon Carter Fuller. Eighth, ninth grade, third place, we had Ty Sekou Tarrant from West. His subject was Patricia Bath, and we had Autumn Cherillian from Rosa. Her subject was George Rooks Dwell. Our 10th, 11th grade winners, first place was Janet Kim from West. Her subject was the impact of the healthcare system on African Americans. Second place, Julia Green from West. Her subject was Helen Dickens. Third place, Sydney Rondo from West. Patricia Bath was his subject. Our 12th grade winners, first place was Samara Pritchett. She did a video on the mass incarceration of African Americans and its impact on mental health. Second place was Raina Limper from West, Alexa Kennedy. And third place, Shira West from East. Her subject was Alexa Kennedy. All of the students will receive gifts and various items and books from the Cherry Hill Public Library. Give them just a wonderful round of applause.
And just for those of you that are here this evening, take an opportunity as you walk and leave tonight, that a number of the posters are hanging up in the hallways here at the administration building. So we appreciate Cherry Hill African American Civic Association, the time, effort, and energy, the volunteering that your judges did to go through so many of the projects and take the time to look at them, to watch them, to read them. We're incredibly grateful that you continue this going. So thank you very much to the organization.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. And thank you. Congratulations to all those that won and all those that put in entries this year. And it is a wonderful contest and an annual item to look forward to. So thank you so much for your hard work. All right, next we will go into 3 administrative presentations. I'll turn it over to Dr. Malash to introduce those.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. We do have 3 really good presentations tonight. In fact, when we discussed in which order to put them, there was quite a bit of debate among the administrators about who should have the opportunity to go first. So we're actually starting with a very exciting one, which is the African American Studies update. And honestly, the determination was made because we have a number of our teachers who are here this evening to deliver an update on this brand new program that was introduced this year, this mandatory class, this semesterized class at our high schools. So Dr. Morton, do you want to do a little introduction of the team that's going to present, and then we'll have them come up?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So first and foremost, just to reiterate what Dr. Malash has said, the district took a courageous step, and this Board of Education took a courageous step this year in introducing this African American Studies course as a mandatory requirement at the high school level for graduation. Prior to the year, there were concerns about what would be taught, what the curriculum would look like, would it honor all kids, and would kids feel dignity while they're in the classes. I can tell you, I've had an opportunity to visit classes from both sides of town, and the teachers and instructors have done a phenomenal job, absolutely phenomenal job. So much so that we thought it would be only appropriate tonight to give you an opportunity just to hear a bit from the teachers who have been at the forefront and implementing this curriculum. So joining us tonight are Ms. Davis from High School West, Ms. Robinson from High School West, Ms. Rogers from High School East, and Ms. LaShore from High School East as well. They're just gonna touch on a couple of broad topics and just speak for just a couple of minutes about what the experience has been in the first semester. So First up, I'm going to ask Ms. LaShure to come up and just share a few remarks.
Good evening, all. So I'm Jennifer LaShure. I am a social studies teacher at High School East. And this year I've had the honor and privilege of teaching this newly required African American Studies course. We recently completed the first semester on January 31st. And at that time, prior to closing out the semester, I checked in with the students to get their feedback and their impressions of their overall experience in the course. And the students shared that above all else, they truly enjoyed learning about topics in which many of them had little to no previous exposure, whether that was in any of their previous history courses or just in learning outside of school. And they expressed that learning about these topics helped them gain a better understanding of themselves, of their peers, and of the world. And they made specific mention of our study of the following topics: ancient African empires such as Axum, Mali, Benin, and Great Zimbabwe, and their contributions to global civilization, both then and now. The connection between West African cultural practices and American culture, as demonstrated in the work of multifaceted artist Beyonce, American cuisine, as well as the traditions of the Gullah Geechee people of the South Carolina and Georgia Low Country. The social construct of race, as examined through the US Census Bureau's changing racial categories, dating back to the first census in 1790 to the most recent census in 2020. And the role of historically Black colleges and universities as pioneers of social change in American society. What is most important to emphasize is that these topics were explored in a classroom community that had an emphasis on respect, open-mindedness, empathy, and inclusiveness. And as a class, we worked to create an environment where all students were able to voice their ideas, they were able to ask questions, and they all felt as though they were seen, heard, and valued by others. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. LaShure. I'm going to ask for Ms. Davis to come up and just share a few remarks as we talk about challenging varied perspectives.
Good evening. My name is DL Davis, and I had the pleasure of teaching this new course. I'm a new teacher in New Jersey, but not a new teacher. So I don't even consider myself a teacher in the normal historical sense. I tell my students from day one, this is not your traditional history class. And I'm there to help you challenge perspectives and think outside of the box, all through the lens of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Oftentimes our students, especially when we're exploring the idea of African-American history, have very kind of isolated incidents. They understand that there was a period of enslavement. They recognize Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, but they miss the connecting elements. Just like if you've only seen Iron Man and one of the end games, you're missing those connecting facets. So my job as a facilitator is what I tell my students, is to help them broaden their horizon, recognizing there's elements of history, not just through one lens in which we have to speak, but recognizing that you can think outside of the box. A lot of aspects of history apply to gender roles, sexual orientation, men, women, individuals of Asian descent, and more. So challenging them to think a little differently and connect the dots in ways that US history may have left a gap, or world civilization, and pulling it all together. And my second semester students have a little bit more to give because they've had a semester of world civ. For my upperclassmen, they've had more reminders of US history, and they're able to see how new experiences fit into that mold. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Davis. I'm going to ask Ms. Rogers to come up and just talk a bit about race and data representation.
Good evening, everyone. I prepared some remarks so that I don't ramble on. It is both an honor and a pleasure to be invited here to speak tonight. I'm a parent and an educator in the district. I'm invested in the future of our children because I'm invested in the future of our community. My experience facilitating the learning of students on topics of African-American history has been exciting, interesting, at times challenging, but always joyful. One lesson that gets conversations happening in the classroom is calling in instead of calling out. As a classroom community, we strive to cultivate an environment where students feel safe enough to have difficult conversations, safe enough to make mistakes, safe enough to face challenge of their opinions, and brave enough to speak one's own truth and lived experience. Within this lesson, students discuss the creation of classroom norms and the importance of communication, keeping the conversation going, respecting one another's opinions, accepting we may disagree, but never being disagreeable. My students appreciate my honesty and enthusiasm as an instructor. They respond in kind with the curiosity and a keen interest to learn the narratives not commonly included in our standard history curriculum. I survey my students at the end of each semester to gauge their new learnings, as well as to improve my practice as an instructor. I want to share a few of the comments from the inaugural class of African American Studies at Cherry Hill East. I would absolutely recommend this class to others. I think that it teaches material in an effective way. My lessons are discussion-based, which forces students to think critically about what they are learning and not just memorize facts. Because we are encouraged to think and ask questions, it makes the learning process more enjoyable. And then from another student, my favorite lesson was learning about the role of the church played during slavery. This specific lesson was my favorite because I had a religious tie to it. As a Christian myself, growing up in church, I never knew why the music was always so joyful. And then here's another. My favorite lesson from this course was when we learned about great African civilizations. Personally, I found it interesting to see how developed and intelligent Africans were. I feel like the typical stereotype about Africans was that they are uncivilized and live in undeveloped villages. Seeing information that contradicts seeing information that contradicts that really piqued my interest. Now here's a little bit of criticism because I have to add it for honesty. On the other hand, I dislike the reading guide we had to complete in the beginning of the year. It was extremely long, and instead of pertaining the information, I felt like I was kind of just filling up the sheet. I had to include a little bit of criticism so that you didn't think I was showing you all the good stuff, all right? I'm so proud of the way students have embraced this endeavor, and I'm excited every day I get to go into the classroom and lead them on these journeys of discovery. Thank you ever so much for the opportunity. Thank you for lending me your children. Thank you for lending us your children, their minds, their spirit. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I hope to be able to continue this for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rogers. Thank you, Ms. LaShore. Thank you, Ms. Davis. And thank you, Ms. Robinson as well, who's in the back, but who's certainly been a great support. Also, I don't think anything else needs to be said from me. So questions, if there are any.
Okay, so a question and just a thought. So first of all, Ms. Davis, you referenced having other, I guess, upperclassmen in your course, and I'm just wondering, and maybe Dr. Morton can answer this, but just, do we know how many students who are upper class? Because they're not the required students to take it, so they're taking it by choice. Do we know how many other students are choosing to take this class?
Yeah, you know what? So I can get the number for you. I just have to look it up and I can get the number for you and get it back out to you as well. There have been elective classes that have been available as well, African American history, that many upperclassmen have taken over the years. And I can get that number for you as well.
That'd be great. Thank you. And Mrs. Rogers, you literally I do lend you my children in your class as you talk about that. I think that for me, and this is maybe for CNI down the road, is just looking at, this is the beginning of a process that we talked about. This class is a first step, but how do we make sure that our curriculum is more broad going forward, and just kind of sharing my thoughts with fellow board members about something I'd love to see us to have more discussion on. So thank you. And thanks for the presentations.
Mrs. Fleischer.
Thank you. Mine is more of a comment, just how much I sat here and how our students are so lucky to have these teachers teach this African American Studies course. Being that it's so new, I can just feel your enthusiasm and also your open-mindedness and engaging the kids. So thank you all so much. And thank you to the administration too. This is, a really first step, like Mrs. Stern had said, and for our board to hear back. And I would love to see it grow and for all of us to even get more updates, because this class seems like it's alive, like it's a moving and living thing. And I really appreciate that. So thank you again tonight for coming.
Thank you. I just echo my appreciation and great presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Avati. Thank you all. And again, thank you to the teachers that just delivered the presentation. Having had the opportunity, as Dr. Morton talked about, to be in some of the classes at both of the high schools, it really has been fantastic to watch the interaction and the environment that these masterful teachers have created for their students, for there to be productive dialogue, for there to be open dialogue. It's the things that, make us so good as a school district, because the quality of the staff that we have, the opportunity for students to share their perspectives, to ask questions, to have that level of vulnerability that comes into a conversation in the name of learning, right? And in the name of learning and getting better, what we do. So we'll definitely provide additional update at the end of the year. There'll be additional curricular updates, during the course of this year about where we are with revision of, the humanities curriculum across the district, other new courses that are being looked at as we move into the future, but an ongoing process, right? And developmental process. So thank you all for the opportunity as we had them present. And to our teachers, again, thank you for what you continue to do. You are welcome to stay on. I know you probably all have work to do for tomorrow as well, but thank you for being here with us this evening. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mahan. Dr. Mahan has a team of principals that are here with her this evening to deliver an update on the district goals. So as you recall, a couple of years ago, it seems in some ways like it was a long time ago, in February of 2020, but it was literally only 2 years ago, the district adopted 3 strategic goals that we adopted from 2020 through 2025. These 3 strategic goals came out of some visioning work that was done across the district, focus groups that were done, surveys, discussions within the community, discussions within the district, but to provide overall direction in terms of where we see ourselves going as a community and as a school district. So Dr. Mahan and your team, I'm happy to turn it over to you, and we're excited about the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. You took some of my thunder there, but I'll keep rolling. So our presentation, where are we? A district goals update. If I could please have, this evening, I'll have several administrators presenting with me. Dr. Dennis Perry, Dr. Neil Birdie, Mrs. Melissa Gleason. Thank you. So tonight we will be presenting an update on where we are towards attainment of the district goals. I also have to thank Mrs. Heather Esposito, the only district technology coach in the district, for helping us to put this presentation this evening. Our presentation this evening will include a brief overview, a slideshow, and a brief presentation from my colleagues, which will highlight concrete example of attainment towards the board goals across the pre-K-12 spectrum. I start again with our district mission statement. As a district, even during these uncertain times, we are committed to developing open-minded thinkers who are able to thrive in an ever-changing world. And we're also committed towards attainment of our district goals. Dr. Malash already reviewed with you the 3 goal areas, again, which are listed here: student wellness, purpose and passion, and connecting beyond our classroom. So before I play this brief slideshow, I just wanted to say that often we talk about commitments. You've seen that in many of our presentations during the last 18 months. And we use that terminology to talk about a safe return to schools. We're talking about availability of breakfast and lunch, transparency, our partnerships with local organizations, and conversations that we're having with the Department of Health. Today, we want to refocus our attention to what Cherry Hill Public Schools is known for: our commitment to providing students with a high-quality education, supporting students academically, socially, and emotionally, and remembering that we want our students to be happy and safe while they are learning. This video continues to demonstrate our commitment towards this high-quality education, meeting mental health standards and social emotional needs of our students. So I'd like to play this, and then I will introduce my colleagues. So that short video showed you countless examples across our school district highlighting attainment towards our board goals, towards our district goals. At this time, I would like to invite Mrs. Gleason, principal of Payne Elementary School, to the microphone. She is going to share an elementary example of student wellness. Following Mrs. Gleason, you will hear from Dr. Perry, principal of East High School, who will be discussing purpose and passion. And lastly, to wrap us up, will be Dr. Birdie, principal of Carusi Middle School, discussing connecting beyond our classrooms.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. So I wanted to talk a little about student wellness at the elementary school level. So obviously I represent Thomas Paine, but I also represent the other elementary principals. And really at the heart of this and what we've tried to center this year is helping our students learn socially and emotionally, but in becoming in the very fabric of our schools, that it's not just something that happens once per week, that it's something that is ongoing and happens daily. So I broke this into whole school, classroom, and students. So at Thomas Paine, the framework that we use to address student social emotional learning is called the zones of regulation. And basically, it's just providing our students with the language to help them identify their feelings. So if they're in the green zone, they're ready to learn, they're excited and motivated. If they're in the yellow zone, they might be a little frustrated, maybe off task. The red zone is where they're not feeling ready to learn. And then the blue zone is if they're tired or sleepy or not feeling well. So we do this daily with our students. Every morning, we have a morning meeting and we review the zones of regulation. And what we've really found is that it's become a common language in our school. And it's really empowered our students, even our kindergartners, to express their emotions, because that we find if they don't, sometimes they don't have the words to really tell us how they're feeling. So if they can say, I'm feeling like I'm in the yellow zone, and then we prompt them to, well, what are some strategies we can do to get you back to the green zone? So it's providing a framework of common language for our students, and also the explicit teaching of coping skills. Every school in all the elementary schools do follow core values. So at Thomas Paine, you saw an example. This month in February, we're focusing on respect. So our theme for the month is we are respectful of one another. And then we do readings and lots of work centered around that core value. And I know my colleagues at the other elementary schools do the same as well. At the end of every month, we have a big celebration called the Tiger Rally, where we honor our students that demonstrated the core value of that month. And it's a really fun celebration. We have buddy classes, so our older students have the opportunity to become mentors to our younger students and just build cross grade level partnerships, and it's a lot of fun. So for example, next week during Read Across America, our classes will get together, the buddy classes, and read to each other. We have leadership teams. So our fourth grade, we have Kindness Tiger Heroes who do good deeds throughout the building to try to make everyone happy and create a positive learning environment. In fifth grade, we have our leadership team, which those are our safeties. We have a former one right behind me here. And an example at Woodcrest too, Mr. Cohen shared that the third grade does that as well. So the third grade students will mentor and partner with the kindergartners. In our classroom, all schools in all the elementary schools use the Second Step program, which is the explicit teaching of social and emotional learning. So what's different this year is it's moved beyond just the counselors. So the counselors do teach the lessons, the teachers teach the lessons, and the last 3 weeks I've been teaching the lessons with my students. So this unit 3 that we're on right now is empathy and kindness. So we've been having that explicit instruction of what does it mean to be an empathetic friend. We also in our classrooms have calming corners for students that may need just a few moments to get themselves back on task if they're in the green, if they're in the red or yellow zone. We have reflection pieces where if a student is having something going on, we do have reflection time with our counselor to kind of go over and see what we can do to help get the student back on track. And then for students who need more interventions in terms of social emotional learning, they do have their own little pause based on the zones of regulation where they can just show their teacher. And that gives the teacher a little clue in like maybe that student isn't feeling the best today. So again, it kind of all boils down to the framework of giving students, even our youngest learners, a voice in how they're feeling and then prompting them to have the proper coping skills to get back on track. And then finally, a big thing, a couple things. We have the Peace Corner for any students that are having conflict. So trying to teach them appropriate conflict resolution when there is student conflict, because we always say conflict is a part of growing up. That's normal. And lastly, all of the counselors are participating in the Thrive mental wellness training. So every Monday they do get together and go through the training of becoming mental wellness and mental health specialist, which is really great and impactful on our learning communities. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Dennis Perry, Principal of High School East, and I am fortunate to speak about passion and purpose. Passion and purpose, right? This is the best goal I think that we have, really, when we think about it. That's what schooling is all about, creating environments for our children where they are comfortable asking questions and seeking answers and developing interests. At the high school level, certainly at the middle and elementary school, that's true as well. But at the high school level, as they become more and more sophisticated in their thinking and their passions fluctuate from 9th, 10th through 12th grade, it's a great time to spend time with your children. So I thank you for allowing me to be their principal. So I have a few examples, specific examples from both High School West and High School East that would demonstrate purpose and passion, that would speak to the goal, and also generalized high school pieces that we have as well. At High School West this year, one of the areas of focus were to create integrated instructional teams. These are interdisciplinary teams made up of teachers from various disciplines that, based on student survey results, student interest survey results, they identify key themes throughout their classes and really emphasize those with the students so that the students can see the connections. For example, the space race was an area of interest that was noticed, and that was something that was explicitly pointed to in science, math, English, social studies, and also in their broadcasting classes. Another one, let's see if I say this correctly, is mise en place, which is French. That means to put in place, to put in place. And so students explored the theme of putting things in place in their Spanish classes, in their culinary arts classes. Again, these teachers work together to develop these themes: social studies, English, math, study skills, biology, and chemistry. So those are just a couple examples of the thematic discipline instructional pieces that they did at High School West. At East, our focus this year with our staff has been on brain science. We've worked with an organization that stemmed from the Franklin Institute to provide information and learning for our teachers about brain science and how to make things more interesting for students, how to develop passions, and how to make their learning sticky so that it's remembered beyond the day. We had a great use of Zoom and other techniques to bring in outside speakers from the community. Certainly, we've had some politicians that have been able to join our students from the larger United States and also internationally. So we've been able to bring in some really interesting speakers to the classroom with our students through electronic, which really piques students' interest and develops their passion. This year, we've also spent a number of our professional development times and then created lessons for students in cultural proficiency and helping them to understand how to navigate their world and to develop passion for interrelational experiences. So at both high schools, one of the things we're very proud of this year that helps to develop passions are having non-weighted electives. We have, between this year and next year, over 8 new electives for students to choose from, and very proud of the fact that these are non-weighted, which means that students, regardless of their grade point average, can choose to take these courses, and an A, because they're not weighted courses, will not negatively impact the student's class rank. So we're excited that this is something that all students can choose to take. We have at both schools voice surveys and student surveys to give us information about the student experience at each high school, what they enjoy both curricularly and their experiences at the schools. We have certainly at both schools, we have over or close to 100 clubs and activities for students to participate in. If there isn't a current activity or club for students and something that they are interested and passionate about, that's something that we certainly do and can create for them. And then finally, our lunch and learn, the use of the 1 hour in the middle of the day that really provides choice for students on how they choose to use their time. Some students will choose that time to get academic help. Others will choose to decompress with a friend. Others will sit and read a book, and some will eat lunch for an entire hour. But the choice is theirs, and they get to make it each day. And it certainly makes it a much nicer environment for them in which to come to school and ask questions and seek answers. So I thank you for your time tonight.
Mrs. Gleason and Dr. Perry, definitely both a tough act to follow. My name is Neil Birdie. Thank you for having me. I am honored to be the principal at Carusi Middle School and privileged to be here speaking to the Board of Ed and the audience tonight. My goal that I'm speaking on behalf of my middle school colleagues is that of connecting beyond the classroom. Connecting beyond the classroom is a natural fit for the middle level. And I think, as you'll see, there are lots of connections between all 3 goals as we ask kids to not only engage and explore the connections beyond the classroom, but also to do that through the lens of wellness, purpose, and passion. So if you're familiar with the middle level years and the magical time that is for children in terms of development and self-exploration, and seeking their identity and finding their passion, and even identifying groups of children, some of which they'll make lifelong friends with. You'll recognize that connecting beyond the classroom walls is really something that comes natural to middle level educators. So what I took the opportunity to look at some of the language in the goal, what I did was I sort of packaged it in categories that made sense to me. So the overall goal asks us to develop opportunities outside of classrooms that cultivate acceptance, empathy, and self-reflection through the lens of global citizenry. So when I sort of packaged that into larger categories, I first started with student pathways at the high school level. Well, everyone knows that student pathways at the high school level begins at the middle level. So I'm proud of the work that my colleagues and I have done, specifically those related to course of study nights, dozens of students participating in the shadowing days that are currently occurring at High School West, the upcoming athletics and activity night that will occur at High School East, the trips that we've made to Camden County Technical School, and our partnership with the junior ROTC over at West, all of which we expect will allow our students to feel a sense of connectivity as they transition from 8th grade to high school. When I thought about student voice opportunities, I thought about so many of our student-led organizations, which are driven and governed by student interests. They also occur after school, although there is some overlap during the day, but they also are responsible for some of the decision-making that's done in the school. I also thought about the Constitutional Congress that was held at Carusi recently, which gave our students both voice and choice in helping to select some of the rules that govern our school and the ways in which we'll hold each other accountable. I also thought about the many editorial pieces in our school newspaper as just a few of the ways that voice exists at all 3 middle schools. Interacting beyond the classrooms is probably the easiest because most folks recognize the robust extracurricular and co-curricular activities and offerings that occur at the middle school. We had nearly 1,300 students who participated in those such opportunities so far this school year. Everyone immediately thinks of sports, and certainly sports are part of what we do at the middle level extracurricularly. However, we also have a robust band, orchestra, and chorus program through our music, our after-school learning labs, school yearbook, and our theater and drama program, which includes our spring musicals, Matilda, Moana, and Bye Bye Birdie. I also think about our clubs that are driven by student interest, like robotics, environmental green team, art club, chess club, word ninjas, or even the upcoming variety show that'll be held at Carusi later in the spring. I also think of our safe space clubs, which really offer inclusivity and connectivity, things like our Cultural Proficiency Club, our Latinos Unidos, and also our Gay Straight Alliance. And then finally, I thought about the way we've expanded partnerships throughout the community. We've tried to partner with groups that help with the lens of global citizenry in order to give kids a more worldly view. We've partnered this year with the Cherry Hill Public Library, the Cherry Hill Police Department, Cherry Hill African American Civic Association, Jewish Family Services, the University of Pennsylvania, Rowan and Stockton University, New Jersey Bar Association, the American Red Cross, the American Heart Association, and character.org. So while there are plenty of opportunities for kids to connect outside of our classrooms, we recognize that in terms of goal attainment, it's only February, and some of our best work still lies ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gleason, Dr. Perry, and Dr. Birdie. As Dr. Morton said at the end of his presentation, I don't think there's much more needed to be said by me, but thank you to my colleagues for coming out this evening to present. And I hope that, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are still committed to attainment of all of our district goals and making sure that Cherry Hill is seen as the district where everyone goes to, because we are certainly forward-thinking, highly effective, and continuing to give our students what they need academically, socially, and emotionally. Thank you. Any questions?
Well, for my part, I'll say thank you very much for this presentation. Really well done. And it's exciting always to kind of hear what's happening at the, for our students at their school level. This, I'll just say, these strategic vision goals came out of several sessions that we had. They're very powerful. I wish we talked about them more, but I think it's a great way to see where our district is going, and it's just great to keep tracking them and to see the progress here. So thank you very much. And with that, I will turn it to Ms. Friedel.
Thank you. I really just have one question. So in the purpose and passion that Dr. Perry was describing, he talked a lot about East and West. However, we have a third school, the alternative high school, and that was not mentioned. So is there any information on how purpose and passion is being addressed at that school?
Mrs. Friedel, that's a great question. And actually, Dr. Perry did meet with Mrs. Giordano. She is always included in all of our conversations around the district, the board goals, and anything that we do in planning for district conversation. So I can give just one concrete example for purpose and passion at the alternative high school. Recently, students voiced that they wanted to have opportunities for additional elective courses, particularly that related to the graphics and performing arts. So Mrs. Giordano and I are actually working in partnership to extend the current graphics design class to include photography, with a component for the students to actually be able to develop business plans, take pictures of anyone who would eventually like to sign up, create prints, develop their social skills and interpersonal skills when communicating with other adults, because again, we're preparing students to be not only lifelong learners, but active citizens in the community. So really taking that course and developing into a larger spectrum of how students are able to interact in society. So from learning how to take the pictures, printing of the pictures, interacting with individuals who may want to purchase pictures, understanding the full design around photography as a career. So again, something that came from student voice and students asking for something that would speak directly to college and career and their purpose and passion, something that they were passionate about.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan.
You're
And
welcome.
Ms. Friedel, I can tell you that we'll also expect Ms. Giordano, who's the principal at the alternative high school, who's been with us now for about a year or so, that she started about this time last year, March-ish or so, that she'll be out later in the spring to spend some time with the board and provide an update. It's something that we've discussed with Ms. Giordano, something we discussed with Dr. Chapman about updates, being provided by students and by the principal, just about what's going on. The program that is being delivered is absolutely incredible with what it is that we're able to offer the students in this building. We're fortunate as the administrative team because we get to share a building with the students who are here and see what goes on a day-to-day basis. And some of the projects in which they are engaged, involved right here from the kitchen, and things that come out of there that they work on. But tremendous voice and tremendous work. So we'll look forward to that later in the spring.
Okay, thank you. We will look forward to that, and I believe we have an additional presentation.
We do, Mr. Avati. We have one more presentation in the section about presentations. We also have an administrative report, but we'll hold on to that one. So the third presentation that we're going to receive this evening, I am going to turn it back over to Dr. Morton. Dr. Morton and members of the team from the middle level are going to be providing us with an update on the introduction of the new middle level schedule that's going to be introduced and rolled out for September of 2022 at all three of our middle schools. This is some of the culminating work in a project that goes back, at this point, a long time. So Dr. Morton, back to you, Carl.
Absolutely. I'm very, very happy, Dr. Malash, to be able to share work that actually began, I believe, when you were in the role that I'm currently in right now, back in 2015. So, the schedule that we're planning to implement next year is the culmination of that. Joining me tonight will be our middle level, four of our middle level administrators, Mr. Guy, principal of Rose International Middle School, Mr. Ramos, interim principal of Beck Middle School, Dr. Benavides, assistant principal, Carusi Middle School, Dr. Birdie, principal of Carusi Middle School, and Ms. Mallory, our Director of Special Education. So the intention with the presentation tonight is truly to provide a succinct but broadly specific, let's say, if that exists, overview of the middle level schedule, the process that we've gone through, and some of the highlights as well of the schedule. If you look at the schedule in and of itself, it can be difficult to interpret. So we want to try to make it as clear as possible what some of those highlights and benefits of the schedule are. So we'll focus on background and rationale. We'll take a look at the discussion of the proposed schedule, characteristics or aspects of that proposed schedule. And then we'll talk a bit about benefits and considerations. I'm going to ask Mr. Guy to come up and to get us started off with background.
Thank you, Dr. Morton. Good evening, board. So in 2012, we started, I was actually an elementary principal at A. Russell Knight then when we did our elementary rescheduling with Dr. Michael Reddick. And then almost the same time, new high school schedule was implemented just about a year after. And then as Dr. Morton alluded, Dr. Malash, who was assistant superintendent at that point, brought together myself and Dr. Perry and Dr. Cafagna, who were the middle school principals at Beck and Carusi respectively, along with teachers from all three of our schools. And we formed a very robust middle school committee that did a lot of research around what's best practices with middle schools. We actually visited middle schools here in about 3 counties in this area. And then we went over to Philadelphia County and visited an independent middle school there. And we came back with some recommendations to the board about some of the things that we thought about. We made some analyses around the things that we thought every middle school student needed at all 3 of our middle schools. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into the rationale. And then we started the revision process. We actually brought Dr. Reddick back in the summer of 2019 to work with myself and the other 2 middle school principals. And then the pandemic hit in the fall of, or in the winter of 2019. So we had to delay that work, but we did speak, all 3 of the principals spoke with various stakeholders at their buildings and talked with them about getting ready for the middle school schedule. And now here we are in 2022, and we are ready to progress forward. Next slide, please. So our rationale for why we need a middle school schedule is really around consistency and standardization within a schedule at all 3 middle schools. During the pandemic, we've actually achieved this because of standardization that we've needed within hybrid and remote instruction. And then this year, all 3 of our middle schools actually have an 8-period schedule, which allowed for mitigation factors and a number of other pieces. But now with this new middle school schedule, we have something consistent and standardized that moves us in a direction to increase equitable outcomes and equitable experiences for all 3 of our middle schools and all the students that will move through that. So I think that level of consistency is important. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did was we wanted to make sure that all 3 of the middle schools, from a equitable standpoint, we knew that 2 of our middle schools were offering world language for 3 years, and 1 of our middle school was only offering world language for 2 years. So we wanted to robustly prepare our middle school students to go into high school East or high school West, either taking 2A or 2H in a world language or a brand new world language, whether it's Italian or German or Chinese. So we wanted them to have that opportunity of 3 full years of world language instruction. We also learned from Beck that the opportunity for language arts literacy in what we called a double block or extended period of time was something that would be valuable for all content areas, not just language arts. So we devised a schedule that Dr. Benavidez will talk about that allowed for an extended block of time for English language arts, mathematics, science, and humanities. And we allowed for a block of time for world language to be taught both French or Spanish every day for 3 years at all 3 of our middle schools. So that was the rationale that we came up with back in 2015 that we were able to fulfill with Dr. Reddick's schedule, and very, very important for those equitable outcomes. So for the next part of the presentation, I want to turn that over to Dr. Benavidez.
You can go, Julie. Dr. Benavidez, as she comes up, the one key aspect of this planning process has been collaboration between the multiple offices that exist here and the multiple facets of our district as well. Part of that, Ms. Mallory and her team have been intimately involved in the process, the planning process. Ms. Mallory is going to share just some of the special education considerations that came up.
Good evening. Yes, it was a nice opportunity to get to know some of my middle school administrative colleagues a little better and work closely with them. As far as from a special education perspective, the anticipated schedule presents a great opportunity for equity in programs across all 3 middle schools, which is something we regularly discuss and we are excited about. This will allow consistency in programs, and as a result, more students will be able to attend their home school. It will not require students to be moved from their current school placement where they attend now. And all students will continue to receive modifications to curriculum and accommodations as determined by the IEP team. IEPs that are already written for the 22-23 school year to remain in compliance with annual review dates will be amended with parental consent to reflect the appropriate number of minutes consistent with the anticipated new schedule. And parents have been informed of that as we have moved along in the process. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mallory. All right, now Dr. Benavidez.
And now to the 4-day schedule. Mr. Guy alluded to, we have started an 8-period day already, so our kids are familiar with that. What this schedule will do is create a 4-day cycle. So we will remain on an 8-period day. Our advisory now is moved to the beginning of the day from 8 to 8:35. This will allow for music time, I&E, some enrichment and intervention, related services. The remaining periods of the day will be a lunch period at 26 minutes, an exploratory or a physical education class at 52 minutes on a rotating AB schedule. World language will now be offered every day at all 3 middle schools for 52 minutes. And then we have what we're calling a 4-subject rotating schedule, in which 3 of your subjects will be 52 minutes, like everything else, and 1 will rotate on a 78-minute. So that's just an additional 26 minutes for math, science, language arts, and humanities. Some of the benefits of this schedule will be a consistent schedule across all 3 middle schools. World language now offered every day for all grades across all 3 schools. A common advisory period. So we found that that's been challenging this year. Some schools started at 8. Our school starts at 8:50. So a common period will allow for articulation across all 3 schools with the music program, media specialists, guidance counselors. Opportunities for special education teachers to now be on team for purpose and planning. And a deeper exploration when we're giving each subject 26 additional minutes on a rotating schedule. So you'll have math for 78 minutes today, ELA for 78 minutes tomorrow, science and humanities.
All right, thank you. Questions? I'm going to ask our middle school principals if you guys can come up as well.
Dr. Morton, if I can, I'm sorry for the interruption, but I just want to reiterate, especially as we have our precious staff that's really invested a lot of time in this, our expectation for this evening in terms of mask wearing is just what we're doing up here as a panel. And that's to cover your mouth and your nose. It's nothing new. But you will hear in our next report that we'd like to offer you some good news. I'd love to get there though. So if you could just comply with the mask, the nose, the mouth, just as we've been doing for nearly 2 years, I'd greatly appreciate it because a lot of people have worked very hard on this presentation. And let's let them finish. Okay, our next order of business will get us there. All right, so sir, see a couple people, please. It's I don't think it's a lot to ask, so I would really appreciate it. And with that, I will try to uninterrupt.
All right, perfect. Questions?
Ms. Friedel.
Thank you, middle school administrators, for the work and your presentation. I have 2 questions. First question is currently, how long is lunch?
Yeah, so lunch is a little bit different in each of the 3 middle schools. My lunch right now is 22 minutes. They're actually done in about 18 minutes. So 26 minutes is about a 4-minute hike. So we think that we were a little nervous with lunches because we had to shorten lunches because of mitigation strategies that we had to put in place for lunches this year. But we found that at all 3 middle schools, the lunch periods range between 22 and 24 minutes, and 26 minutes is more than an adequate amount of time for students to get lunch and then do the other things that we need to do.
That's good to know. I was thinking it was short, like with all those kids going into the lunchroom.
It's short for the
but
adults. It's short for the teachers that take that 26-minute lunch with the students.
This actually gives them a few extra minutes.
That's right. We're saying that this is an increase of 4 minutes, so they're very excited.
Great. Okay. My other question actually has to do with special ed. So what I heard was all children will get world language at all 3 schools. So the current model has resource room where students may be struggling in reading or math or, language arts. And instead of going to world language, they go and they get a second section of language arts or math or reading. Is that going to be an accommodation that is still in place for these students, or is that going away and those students will be taking world language?
Mrs. Friedel, we'll defer to Mrs. Mallory on that one.
Yeah, thank you. So that's not the case across the board. That has been brought up. However, the teams have made the recommendations based on individual student need and what's needed for their particular core subjects, and that'll continue to be the case. So that'll be discussed at individual IEP meetings.
Okay, so just to repeat back, that will still be a possibility for those individual students who it's determined.
The teams will make recommendations for programs in the IEP.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, okay. Ms. Stern.
Thank you so much. No surprise, I have a few questions. The first one is, and this may be more for Ms. Mallory, currently some of the schools along the lines of what Mrs. Friedel is talking about, they sometimes have like a social lunch. Will that be able to be continued? I don't know why I thought this was a shorter lunch schedule, but it looks like it's not from what Mr. Guy was saying. So I assume that will be able to be continued for the students who are part of that.
Yeah, again, so that's not across the board for every single school. So it'll be made by team decision. And then also in addition to that, schools do have specific programs that they do. So that I imagine would continue. But again, it would be something that would be decided by the team if it were to be an IEP program.
Thank you. Another question I have is, now it's to capitalize, speak with what Mrs. Friedel said last time. It's been a minute since my kids were in middle school, but actually not that long. But if I recall, at the end of the day, there was like a kind of wrap-up class. So I'm not sure if that's still the case. That there were essentially kind of like two non-academic, I don't know what it's called. Anyways, kind of a wrap-up class. I'm not sure if that's the way I look at this. It seems like the end of the day is academics again, kind of the bookend of the day is an academic. So the way I see that is maybe some less downtime for the kids. I'm not sure if I'm have an accurate recollection of that. COVID's changed things a little bit, but want to make sure, how are we handling that? And also in consideration of that too, this is a pretty long class period. Will there be intentionally across the board, like brain breaks in the middle of that class for the extended class? So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I think those are valid questions. We've learned throughout the pandemic that brain breaks this year with mitigation strategies, snack opportunities, masking breaks, even as we move toward March 7th, we will still be implementing those pieces, outdoor opportunities for instruction. Mrs. Sugars has talked with all of us about equipment that we can continue. These are things that we will take with us that we've learned that are valuable practices socially and emotionally for our students, that we will find space for within those 3 52-minute periods in that 78-minute period extended block across all 3 of our middle schools. So we haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts of your question, but it is something that we are looking for implementation across all 3 of our middle schools.
My last question, and not to specifically pick you out, Mrs. Benavides, but I remember when I was at the Carusi facilities tour and we were in a hallway and you talked about this is a very crowded hallway. And you said, we are looking at different release periods for different grades so that we can avoid some of the crowding, which is like a $0 facilities improvement essentially. I was looking to see, is that going to be something that is implemented? Because it looks like everyone's on the same schedule. Every grade is on the same schedule and time frame.
So each grade will have 2 bells essentially that run between each grade. So nobody will be moving at the same time ever.
Okay, so that is part of this.
Yes, it is.
That's exciting.
And the way that Carusi is structured is kind of each grade level has a different hallway. So they'll be moving within their grade levels twice. Each grade will be moving twice. Each group will be moving 2 different times.
And is that, I guess, because the way the schools are structured, it might be different at the other middles, right?
That is
It's
correct.
Carusi that has like the
kind of like a square.
Yeah.
So we have a 6th grade hallway, a 7th grade hallway, and an 8th grade hallway.
Yeah, so it's not as much maybe of an issue at some of the other schools. But okay.
Correct.
You answered all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Rude.
I just wanted to make a comment. Through the 3 presentations tonight, all of this stuff are fruits of the labor that started before I was on the board. And so for me, it's really just a pleasure to see how passionate all of you are in the work that you've done and the effort that you put in for the kids. So for my part, thank you very much. It's awesome.
Mrs. Fleischer.
Thank you. I do also want to thank everyone for their hard work. And I just want to say, I was one of these parents at the beginning of this whole thing with the timeline. If you were to look, I actually had a child at Beck and a child at Rosa at the same time, 8th grader, 6th grader, both with 2 different experiences. So thank you all for listening to parent views, because that's been happening, as you can see, since a long time ago. And to have the consistency across the district, I think can only strengthen us as a district. All the kids have, you want kids to have different experience and great experience, but I think to have that base consistency, I think makes us stronger as a district. So thank you very much for listening to parents, because I know that was something that was very strongly suggested, and I appreciate it. I had another question, and it sort of considers, and I'm weaving this into the middle school. We're talking about the middle school redistricting. And one of the big things that has come from it, one of the things, there's lots of big things, is that the ask for kids with IEPs and special needs to be able to stay at their home schools. And that is something that you've weaved into this presentation. And I just want to, point that out and also ask, how is that going to be done? Because, it's something, when we look at these two big pieces, obviously they're interwoven. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit more in detail how that would be done, maybe Miss Mallory?
That would be Ms. Mallory.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to looking at teacher schedules, and the way the schedule is going to shift is going to allow for opportunity to maximize some resources in different areas. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you all.
I just want to clarify though, Ms. Fleischer, the presentation does not indicate that all the programs would be at each school. Okay, that would be beyond the work that this group is doing. That'll come out of the work that's going on with the redistricting piece.
Okay, I'm going to add my thanks to this committee and this important. Mrs. Tong.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Thank you for all the work that put in. I have a quick question. The question is, if this is to be, when would this be implemented? Starting September or will be the following year?
Yes, so we are planning for a September 2022 start.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again from me. Excellent presentations this evening. Thank you very much. Please stay for the whole board meeting. It's going to be a fun, please don't leave. No, just kidding. I mean, we entrust our professionals to do important work, and if that calls you home at this time, we certainly understand. Dr. Malash, I believe we have an administrative report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ovadia. And again, back to Dr. Morton. Dr. Morton and Dr. Mahan have been really, really busy these last few weeks, months, years. Dr. Morton in the 9 months, 8 months or so that he's been in this position, it's probably been the longest 12 years of his career. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Morton. He's going to go through and deliver our road forward update. So Dr. Morton.
Dr. Malash, I've had the opportunity to work with some passionate folks who are truly engaged in doing what's best for our children in this district. So it's been a great few months for me. Anyway, so the Road Forward Committee met on the 14th of this month. Again, at the forefront of our conversation was the idea for ensuring that any plans that we make and any recommendations that we make allow for the health and safety of our students and staff members, and for students to be in school in person each and every day, as we have done and we've been able to successfully do throughout this school year. Of primary conversation was the topic of masking. In each meeting that we've had, we've tried to look at what the data has told us, what the COVID-19 transmission index rate has been. Each month that I've presented this Cali report here that's on the screen currently. And if you see here in just a few short weeks, we've gone from the very high risk category now down to moderate transmission category. We're in the yellow across the state. As everyone I'm sure is well aware, if you haven't heard, Governor Murphy announced at one of his addresses that Monday, March 7th, the universal mask mandate for schools and childcare settings will be lifted, and that it would be left up to the discretion of districts to decide their masking policies for moving forward. So after considering all of the information that we had available, the Road Forward Committee is recommending to the board tonight the following, and that's that the mask requirements in Cherry Hill Public Schools, grades pre-K actually through 12, be based upon the COVID-19 activity index score as reflected by the chart below. If we are in the very high risk category, the Road Forward Committee recommends that masking be required. However, if we're in the orange, the yellow, or the green, the committee is recommending that masking be made optional. effective March 7th and moving forward. Now, there's one caveat. There's a federal mandate that still exists that requires that students and bus drivers and staff on school buses be masked at all times. So even if we were to move forward with optional masking as it's reflected here on this chart here, students would still be required to wear masks on the school bus. Additionally, in the event that students are on field trips, we will have to abide by the venue's policy. So if the venue is requiring masking, students and staff on the field trip would be required to mask as well. Questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Is there, I see, at least for me, my role and the board's role as well is to protect all the students, protect their, protect student choices, staff choices. Have you considered the possibility of perhaps a teacher? There are times when teachers need to be in close proximity with students. Maybe they're over their shoulder, checking projects, checking a worksheet or something. Student asks for some assistance because maybe they're not sure if they're completing the project correctly. If there is a teacher for whatever reason, maybe their home situation is one where they feel like they're going to continue to wear a mask as it's optional, and their right to do that certainly should be protected. But the student who they are helping, the student who's asking for assistance, maybe is not wearing a mask. If the teacher is uncomfortable in that situation, being in close proximity, so they're no longer socially distanced, is that an issue that the committee has discussed? Is it something that you've come up with maybe some workarounds in the event that scenario comes up, which maybe it won't, but I can just envision that situation where you have a student who is unmasked, asking a teacher to come over and take a look at some work or get closer, but the teacher may be uncomfortable in that situation. How would you propose to handle that?
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic question and a great point. I think, so part of the research that we looked at, we wanted to see the effectiveness of one-way masking as well. So in other words, if I'm uncomfortable with conditions, how effective if I decide to wear a mask and the other person's not wearing a mask, how effective would that be? And the articles and information that we reviewed suggest that one-way masking is effective as well. If teachers are uncomfortable, it's something that I think, the administrators will have to work with teachers on. We do anticipate and we do expect that our children will be provided with the support that they need. So we'll have to figure out how to provide the support. The bottom line is that if students are in need of support, they will receive the support that they need. Any other questions?
Ms. Friedel?
So Dr. Morton, currently with quarantine, so if a student was exposed and they're out for 5 days and they can come back with a mask for the certain amount of days, does that stay in effect or does that leave also? Like masks are optional regardless?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that the quarantine rules will be in effect. So what you're suggesting is that what we had updated our quarantine policies to. Students were able to return after the 5th day, so days 6 through 10, and when they return, they were masked. That will remain in effect until further notice.
Okay, thank you. And contact tracing, will that continue or will that not be happening any further?
No. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. No, we would not be contact tracing. There would be no real ability to do that if students are, because we would normally contact trace if you're a close contact and you're unmasked. But if if everyone's unmasked, I don't think that we would really have the ability to contact trace in that way.
So then what happens if a student tests positive in a classroom, the whole classroom is quarantined?
Well, if they're vaccinated and they're not symptomatic, they would not be quarantined. But if they're symptomatic, they should absolutely stay home. If anyone has symptoms, they should stay home.
And what about unvaccinated students?
Unvaccinated would be close contact. If they were in the room and they were within a certain difference, and the student who is symptomatic was unmasked also.
So I'm sorry, I just want to understand. So then in that case, so classroom at Bret Hart, a student tests positive, the whole class would be notified? No one would be notified? Unvaccinated students would be notified? I'm just not sure.
Yeah, we did not get to that level of detail in the road forward conversation, Ms. Friedel. Dr. Morton and I will get back with the nurses because we have not had any further conversations until we present it to the board. So once we move forward with this practice, then we will get together with the nurses to talk about what it looks like from a practical perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mrs. Fleischer.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm this includes all schools, including Barclay, correct?
Yes.
And my other question is, and I know we talked about this in the road forward, is just to confirm that the schools, since it's optional, wanting all kids to feel comfortable, because we have so many immunosuppressed people and immunocompromised people. So I know that you've all been talking about, making sure people feel supported if they feel like they want to wear masks, whether it's teachers or students.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so again, in making it optional, it's left up to choice. It's individual choice, it's family choice, whatever works best for that individual and that individual family. Certainly, we will emphasize for those who decide to remain masked, we will not tolerate any type of harassment, bullying, or anything like that. The school administrators and building level principals will make sure that they provide that level of support for children.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Stern?
Just to kind of follow up, so, and I'm thinking more for the very young children, if a family is made the decision that they want their child to remain masked, especially for the young kids, is there a mechanism for them to, is there a formal mechanism where that's communicated and therefore there can be support given by the teachers in the classrooms to help enforce that with those kids? Because I know some of the schools are doing that. So just wondering how, if we're handling, if we have anything formal we're putting in place.
Yeah, so that will not be a formalized practice in terms of, I think what you're asking me is if teachers will police mask, will ensure. So if a parent has told a teacher that a child is to wear their mask to make sure they're wearing it all day? Is that what you're
I
asking?
think it's supporting it, especially in families where there's great concern of, for whatever reason, and they've chosen that, is there a support mechanism in place for the very young students by the adults in the room, by the teachers and the aides?
I think age appropriate, so very, very young, if you're referencing, our early childhood center kids, there's obviously teacher support there. But the expectation, I think, for, general elementary students and above, that if the family wants the child to wear the mask, that it's the responsibility of the child to wear the mask, and the teacher will ensure that there isn't any desperate treatment or anything like that, or any bullying or anything that occurs, but the teachers will not take responsibility for ensuring that the child wears the mask all day.
Mrs. Tong?
Thank you, Mr. Valia. I do have a question regarding remote learning. In case if the student has test positive or have symptoms and they stay home, will they be offered remote learning?
Yes, we will continue to offer temporary remote learning. Absolutely.
That's only if they test positive or they have symptoms, right?
Yeah, so if they are made to quarantine, if they're made to quarantine by the district, they'll be provided an opportunity for temporary remote instruction. We cannot provide temporary remote instruction for reasons other than those that we've already specified.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll add my thanks to the Road Forward committees and the committee and the recommendation. The board tonight doesn't take specific action, but we appreciate this update in this direction. And with that, we will move into correspondence. Is there any board member that would like to offer correspondence this evening? Mr. Mayor.
Unfortunately, Mr. Guy is no longer here because this was partly for him, but on Friday I had an opportunity to be present when Rosa was awarded the County School of Character Award, which really speaks to not just his work, but the administration, the staff, in particular the teachers and the students at Rosa, for the fact that they embrace the values of character. And it struck me as particularly important because we've all been in a situation as parents, and I'm sure I will be later tonight or tomorrow when I'm asked by one of our kids what this particular issue is important for. Why will I need to know this? And the factors that go into character, integrity, citizenship, and respect, those are the things that all of the students will take with them. Those are the tools that they will need and that we all need as they grow and as you know, we are here to navigate the challenges that they will ultimately succeed in. And so the fact that Rosa was rewarded for that work, I thought speaks volumes for what that administration has done, for the support that I think the board has given them. And I was happy to be there, happy to see that the Rosa teachers who were there were also excited to get to meet up with one of the Rosa graduates, see how he's doing, and the fact that they still have that passion. They wanted to continue to connect with that one student also was impressive to see. So it was a good day. It was an award that was well earned, and I think will really stand those students in good stead in the future.
Thank you. Mrs. Fleischer?
Thank you. As I had mentioned before, I was able to attend the meeting, the Road Forward Committee meeting, and I want to thank Dr. Morton and Mrs. Case Abner, who's the head nurse, as well as all the teachers for all their hard work and the parents that sit on the committee. I thought it was great. And also I had the opportunity to actually videotape myself reading a book for the African American Read-In from Mann School. I'm not able to go tomorrow in person, so I was given the opportunity to do it virtually, and it was a wonderful opportunity. And I want to thank them for embracing such a great program and also for allowing us to be part of it.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that. I believe Ms. Stern and I will be attending in person and perhaps, oh, Dr. Malash as well, of course. All right, wonderful. Next, we're going to turn to our student representative reports. And by draw of a hat, we will start with East and Ariana.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Okay, perfect. Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is having a good week. This report is a little bit long, so I apologize. February has been very busy. So starting off with school updates, our sophomores are excited for this year's sophomore cotillion or soft-cot, which is this Friday, and it's going to be in the cafeteria, and the theme is Night Under the Stars. Excuse me. The drama department is finishing up its preparations for March's play, which is the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which I really like actually. And performances will be between March 11th and March 20th, and I encourage everyone to go. Senior trip gets closer and closer every day, and there's a mandatory meeting for students tomorrow, and the same, or not the same, but that meeting will be held for parents as well at 7 p.m. on Zoom. The next day, on Thursday, there will be an open house at East where incoming freshmen can meet different clubs and advisors around the school and get acquainted with not only the school, but the teachers and their clubs and everything like that. This is really exciting since last time it was on Zoom. Our robotics team won 4th place state championships this year, which is insane. And a lot of our clubs are preparing activities for this week and for the rest of the month. French Honor Society had a movie night today, and Latinos and Amigos had their empanada sale today. African American Culture Club will have their Black History Month celebration this Saturday at 1:30. Tickets are $5 for students and $10 for parents and visitors, and there will be performances, cultural foods, and games, and I encourage, again, people to go. As for arts, Winter Choral Concert was last week, in which our choir groups performed some wonderful pieces, such as Water Fountain and How Can I Cry? For sports, we're having really, really good seasons for sports. We have a state champion. Maya Himo is the 2022 NJSIAA 126-pound girls wrestling state champions, and she is the first girl in East history to win a state championship. As for boys basketball, today's game was a rematch between East and West, and their playoffs start on Monday. Boys basketball has had an amazing season. We're really excited to see them continue playing. Girls basketball, we won 32-26 over Washington Township a few days ago, which I'm also very proud of. Swimming, we're having a great season for swimming. East Girls Swimming are the 2022 NJSIAA Group A South champions, which is the 5th year in a row. And boys swimming is the 2022 NJSIAA South Group A champions, which is the 12th year in a row. And they are currently in the semifinals of their playoffs. Moving on, we're doing a special program at East, which I'm very excited to talk about. Last meeting, I talked about the article that came out on East Side addressing our environment and things such as anti-Semitism, racism, and sexism in our school. In response to this article, Dr. Perry took the initiative to address our concerns. The last day 5 on our long days, we're having a series of lessons on microaggressions and how to address them, our resources and stuff like that. The first lesson, which was in our math class, and this was on what is a microaggression, what it looks like, different types, and why it is a microaggression, rather than just telling you this is what it is. Today's, which is in our English classes, was in how to respond to a microaggression, which is self-advocacy, I statements, and other conversation starters to really get these conversations going and explain stuff like that. The next one is on advocating for others in case you witness someone say a microaggression directed at someone else and situations like that. And the last lesson is on our resources and making sure all students are aware of the resources we have in our school, the people they can go to, and everything that is available to them to use so we can create a safe environment. There's an overwhelmingly positive response from students, especially from minority students. Obviously, there's going to be students who joke about it, who don't take it seriously, but even jokingly, they internalize these lessons, which is incredibly important. Exposure to these topics and the opportunity to have this conversation is what makes students feel more comfortable just in their own school. I think it's a wonderful step in our journey to make East a more welcoming and inclusive environment, and I hope we can have more activities like this. So obviously the pressing matter today is masking, as we have addressed. There are mixed feelings about optional maskings in schools, since it would be harder to protect yourself from COVID. You can't really control what others are doing. However, many students I have talked to have said they would keep their masks on even if masking was optional, especially in our small classrooms, because sometimes ventilation isn't the best. And many students really want to try their best to protect their teachers, especially the people at home, and again, especially their teachers. One doubt I've heard a few students voice is that it seems a little bit counterintuitive to stop sending COVID updates and contact tracing, especially right now. So especially right now with people deciding not to wear their masks Sending these COVID updates would be a really good update, I guess, since students with those updates can make a more informed decision on whether to wear their mask or not. It would be really important to know how many, like what's going on in their school to have a more informed opinion. So yeah, I know the COVID dashboard is still a thing, but still I wanted to let you guys know that. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then our attention will turn westward. Lord Kevin.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Salvatorelli. I'm a student board rep from West. So starting off with school news, it is high school choice season. West has hosted shadow days for 8th graders on Thursday and Friday of last week, and will be hosting 2 more on Thursday and Friday this week. 8th graders have the opportunity to meet coaches, see elective teachers, and learn about our programs. And it wraps up with a meal provided by our culinary arts program. In activities news, the Peer Leaders program is currently recruiting for next year. Peer Leaders, which are 12th grade students, are at West, will provide additional support to incoming 9th graders throughout the school year and at the end of their 8th grade year, and in August to help run freshman orientation. The Color Run. So the 4th annual Cherry Hill West Color Run will be held on March 6th. At this community event, we serve food and have a DJ. There will also be a community shredding event to help families properly dispose of sensitive documents. To participate in the run, it is only $15 and it helps benefit West baseball. We will also be holding our annual Red Cross blood drive in the atrium outside of the auditorium tomorrow on February 23rd. Help protect the lives of many with just a few minutes of your own time. In department news, the Performing Arts Department. The vocal music program on last Thursday and Friday put out the first Broadway night since February of 2020. Broadway night is a night of choir performances, solos, skits, and much more. Thank you to all who made it out to go see it and all the wonderful staff, volunteers, and students to help make it possible. The theater program. West Theater completed their production of Cinderella in late January. Despite the unfortunate snow day on Saturday, there are still 2 full live performances and 2 rebroadcasted live stream performances. The program is now looking towards Radium Girls in March and SpongeBob the Musical in May. In instrumental music news, the District Jazz Showcase will featuring all the district's middle school and high school jazz bands is tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in the Rosa Gym. West Instrumental Music will present its festival concert featuring the Wind Ensemble Orchestra, String Ensemble, and Jazz Ensemble on next Thursday at 7 p.m. in the new auditorium. The West Jazz Ensemble is also traveling to Southern Regional High School on Wednesday, the 9th of March, for the New Jersey State Jazz Preliminaries, which the top 9 scoring bands will continue to the state finals at the end of April. In athletics news, West Girls Swim dominated this season, winning 3 playoff meets, including against Morristown, which is the reigning state champion. This earned them a spot in the Group B finals for the first time in nearly a decade, where they fell to Mainland. Last week, the esports team also started their spring season. The program is rapidly growing and currently has around 50 members competing nationally in various games. In ROTC news, our AFR-JROTC has completed their first promotion cycle this year. Of the 71 cadets on the JROTC roster, 44 received the next higher grade promotion for a rate of 62%. Finally, and the color guard has been given the opportunity to present colors at the April 5th Flyers game. More information is posted on Twitter and Instagram. Finally, student comments. This is West students on school start times. Since October, students, teachers, administrators, and parents from across the whole town, including Sam Messias and Haley Ivory from West, helped develop recommendations for school start time changes. We took these recommendations back to West students for discussion, and a plethora of opinions have been expressed, mirroring the diversity of the people in our school. Many students are in favor of moving school start times later. However, most students express concerns about shortening of the lunch periods. The full hour between lunch and homeroom provides valuable social emotional learning time, especially with the Lunch and Learn program. Students also expressed concerns about moving start times later, increasing stress in relation to after-school activities and sports. These programs provide valuable experiences beyond the academic day and are very important to students. However, many seniors also express that they believe a better or another solution is to allow for a more flexible college-like schedule, and that would better support the plethora of learning styles and allow for a more flexible start time based on student needs. However, they do realize that moving a change towards a schedule like that could not happen in a single step and will need to be a many-year process. This is only a fraction of the ideas expressed by my peers, and I hope that central administration and the board finds this information valuable in making future decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. And student voice is always valuable. We appreciate that part. We're going to perhaps talk a little bit about that later. Okay, well, we've made it, folks. All right, first public comment, to which I have a few things to say, and just scaffolding where we're turning now in terms of our public comment. Number one, there will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first public comment session is for board action items only. If you've reviewed the agenda or if you have it up on your phone, these are items 13 to 16. There will be another public comment section for any topic at the end of the meeting. If you are a student in the district, you may comment on any agenda item during this first public comment. If you would like to speak now, please identify the agenda item and clearly state your name and municipality. We will alternate between speakers here in the room and those that are online. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The timer on the screen will indicate the amount of time that you have. Now, Cherry Hill is a community that values education, and educational topics often bring out passionate response. The Cherry Hill Board of Education supports a school climate in which our diversity is a source of strength and all are included. Respect is foundational in how we treat you, in how we treat each other, and in how we support our administration and staff in their essential work in our district. Please join us in practicing the utmost respect for all. And generally, we start in the room. You are first.
Hello, my name is Sophia Gaudio. I'm a 6th grade student at Rosa. First, I would like to thank you for listening to my dad and other parents in this district who fought to remove masks from our school. I am excited to see all my friends and teachers' faces who choose to not wear a mask. I am also hoping to complete my 3-year time at Rosa Middle School, and all my other friends feel the same way. It's not fair to take away such an amazing thing like Rosa. We all have many friends and wish to make more memories at Rosa. I also feel bad for kids younger than me, like my sister, who no longer have the choice to go to Rosa. Thank you for letting me talk about my opinions.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to turn on the line. We have a student, Jack Neary.
Hello, my name is Jack Neary. I live in Cherry Hill. Hello, I just wanted to call in and talk about school start times. As a high school student of West, I would like to say that the current start times are fine in my opinion. And changing it so that you get 30 minutes of sleep won't really do much. I think the real issue is the fact that students who want this are crying for help because of the fact they are drowning in work. Changing start times would basically cause more issues than it solves, in my opinion. It would make the elementary students at school later, which could cause them to slowly lose interest in working because they only have so much energy, and it could also risk them falling asleep from exhaustion. Not to mention the fact that it also has impact on the family's routine, which could cause issues, especially for an autistic child. It also been predominantly E students, which I think is the fact that they have too much work and struggling to manage it. Personally, at West, I've been able to manage my work and homework, but that's not to say there are not students who do struggle at West as well. I think you're trying to solve for a problem that isn't the real issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next in the room.
And I'm in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Item 15.2. So, Mr. Bart, I am sorry to see you go. So we go from soup to, I'm sure, many times nutty situations here in Cherry Hill. But I thank you for your time. I hope you have hobbies, because when one spouse retires, it can be devastating to the spouse unless one has something to do. So I wish you well. Okay, thank you for all your years, the highs and the lows, and just for being here, and especially for being a Cherry Hill resident as well. Good luck.
Thank you. We'll next turn to the line to, I believe, Dr. Podowitz.
Jeff Podowitz, Cherry Hill. I'm talking about policy 16.4. It's policy actually I'm 16.4, policy 2468, independent educational evaluations. Please note from New Jersey Administrative Code 16A, 14-2.5, an independent educational evaluation can be provided by a private practitioner, et cetera, who is appropriately certified or licensed where a license is required. According to our district's policy 2468, the evaluated needs to be located within a 40-mile radius of Cherry Hill School District. Please modify the 40-mile radius limit to include the whole state of New Jersey in addition to that 40-mile radius. That's the whole state of New Jersey. According to New Jersey Administrative Code 6A 14-2.5, any independent evaluator, whether purchased at the school district of education or a private expense, the District Board of Education shall permit the evaluator to observe the student in the classroom or other educational setting as applicable. According to our policy 2468, the time is limited to 2 hours only. That policy was slightly modified. All right, this amended policy allows that the parents of the evaluator may request in advance through the case manager a longer observation period when they believe the child individually require additional observation. The district will consider such request and provide a response. Please modify the 2 hours to make it 12, which gives quite a more time for an independent evaluator to evaluate the child. Not this, the district's gonna look at it. All right. This guarantees additional time for observation if the independent educator evaluator feels it is necessary. Please vote no on this policy 2468 today. Modify this policy, and you want to be in the spirit of New Jersey Administrative Code 6A 14-2.5. Please help these students. I mean, the way I read it, it's more like you're really caring about, legally, what can we do? No, why don't you just allow the kid to be evaluated by an independent evaluator and help, which I don't see that. All right. I guess a good word here is equity. I don't think you're being equitable to these students with what I'm reading here. And there are other things too. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Seeing no one approaching the podium or online, we'll turn it over to Dr. Melange for superintendent comments.
Thank you, Mr. Avadia. I appreciate the time. Again, I want to thank everybody that delivered the presentations this evening for the time they spent preparing them, being with us this evening and sharing the information. I did just get a message from Mr. Barrow. The East Boys swim team did win this evening. So they will be, that was in the state semifinals. So they will swim this Saturday afternoon, I believe, down at GCIT for the state championship. And I think the girls swim tomorrow. Ariana, does that sound right? I think so. I think the girls are tomorrow, so we'll look forward to that. This was the first year that all 4 swim teams from our 2 high schools competed in the South Jersey finals. They don't compete in the same groups, East and High School West, because of size, but all 4 did compete. And congratulations to all of them for what they did, and especially to the East teams who won the South Jersey championships, continuing that reign that they've had in this area of the state for quite some time. So very, very positive. The students mentioned, the basketball teams. It's a great afternoon for basketball. The East-West boys game was going on at High School West. The East-West girls game is going on at High School East. The East teams, the Cougars prevailed in both of the games, both hard fought and close contests. Has been a wonderful winter season. Ariana did mention Maya and winning the state championship. She's the first female wrestler in Cherry Hill history to win a state championship, an individual state championship. So congratulations to her. She's only the 2nd student from High School East ever to win a wrestling state championship. The last one was in 1988 So it's been more than 30 years since we've had an individual state champion from high school East in wrestling, and she's a junior. So we'll look forward. I don't know whether it was broadcast. The meet was up at Phillipsburg. It was broadcast online. I know that there were a lot of people that were online watching it Sunday evening, like many of us. An incredibly well fought match, went right down, to almost the end. She was down by a point, well into more than halfway through the third period, and ended up pinning her opponent. So great drive and determination. So congratulations to Maya and to her coaches. Very well done. Kevin, I believe, mentioned the Jazz Showcase, which is tomorrow evening. If you like jazz, or if you're not sure if you like jazz, I encourage you to come out to the gymnasium over at Rosa Middle School tomorrow evening. You'll have an opportunity to see the jazz bands from our 5 comprehensive secondary schools, Beck, Crucy, and Rosa, High School East and High School West. It's an incredible night of music. Like I say, if you like jazz, you're not sure, come out and listen. It's an absolutely incredible show. You'll be blown away by the level of talent that these students have and what the conductors do to get the music out of them and what it sounds like in a middle school gymnasium. East's jazz band gave a tremendous performance last weekend and got incredible ratings. Kevin mentioned the West Jazz Band is competing this weekend. It's just incredible to see the music program and what goes on in our school district. So I encourage you to join me at Rosa tomorrow evening for that program. Thank you to the board for the discussion about masking and the recommendation that came from the Road Forward Committee. I want to echo what Dr. Morton said, what many of you said, to thank the members of the committee for the work that they've done during the course of this year, countless hours that they've dedicated to being informed, to representing their peers, our staff members. There was representation from staff members. There were community members, parents, our special ed parent advisory group, our special ed PTA, our zone PTA, who sat on that committee for the level of discussion they put in. Based on the board's discussion this evening, we will go forward and we will update. The Road Forward plan will be updated tomorrow. That'll be online. And then as the message that went out last Friday about what the recommendation was going to be, that's what will be reflected in the plan. Then that will go into effect on March the 7th. So thank you to everyone for their input, as we've done literally now for the last 2 years, because 2 years ago, as we sat, in this second to the last week or last week in February, we were well into discussion talking about COVID-19 and the coronavirus. At that time, it was, what are we going to do, if this impacts us? What are the plans that will go into place? We got together, all the superintendents in the county during that last week in February of 2020 to start to develop, our plans in terms of how we would respond. Now, 2 years later, we know so much more. We've been through so much. As a school district, we've tried to maintain the same approach in terms of how we approach dealing with the virus. We've been thoughtful, we've been deliberative, we've taken in all the information that we can possibly get, and that comes from the CDC, from the Jersey Department of Health, Camden County Department of Health, who's been a phenomenal partner throughout this, the policy lab at places like Children's Hospital, Virtual Health System, which serves as our district doctors. We have many medical professionals that live in our community, and many folks that just are willing to share their perspective and their thoughts. The humanization of what the virus has done and the impact that it's had on Cherry Hill goes into influence the discussions that we take place. So on behalf of the board and the rest of the administrative team, I'm appreciative to everybody who has weighed in and shared their perspective. We often are not first in making a determination about where we are because we do take that time and go through to weigh all that information and consider what ultimately the impact is going to be. I do ask all that are in the community as we do move forward, to talk to your children and prepare your children. There are many people that will continue wearing masks. I have no doubt about it. I am sure that when we sit here at the March 8th board meeting, there will be people sitting up here who will still be wearing masks. There will be people in the audience who will be wearing masks, and there will be people who will not. Right? One of the things that we all have to do and what we need to do as we move forward as a community is to support our students and being able to understand that and to respect that. Right? Our children will respond based on how we as adults respond to what's going on within our community. Right? There are kids that will and need to continue to wear masks. There are people that are immunocompromised. I'm immunocompromised, right? That's no big secret to anybody. I will probably continue to wear a mask in meetings and in settings like this, right? Because I will feel comfortable based on what it does to my health, right? What chances I can take, what chances I can't take. There'll be people like that in our schools, our staff members, and our students. We need to respect that and know that, right? It's challenging enough being 7 or being 14 or being 19 and going through schools, right? So as a community, we need to come together. We need to decide that that's what we're going to do and what we're going to tell our kids, regardless of what our personal feelings are and whether they're wearing masks or not, right? That's the best way that we can move forward together as Cherry Hill. So thank you, Mr. Ovadia, for the time. Because Mrs. Einhorn already brought it up, I was going to wait until it was already approved. But there is a special retirement, that's on in the HR portion of the agenda. We go through and the agenda gets moved. So make sure you pay close attention to that, and I'll make some comments after the vote.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. That brings us to our action agenda, which is a consent agenda. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items number 13 through 16. Can I have a second, please? Mrs. Arroyo, any questions? Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Sugars, could you initiate the voting?
Okay, board members, the online voting option is open. You can cast your votes. If there are any no or abstentions, you can let me know that now.
Mr. Sugar, I need to abstain from 14.2. Thank you.
Just to interject, Mr. Mayor, under 14, being our newly minted board member, I want to just look at the first two, or first, oh gosh, the first 4. Boy, we had a lot of meetings in January.
Mr. Mayor, are you able to cast your vote?
There's, so it's the
Okay,
IT's not, I can indicate a yes vote.
a yes vote.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, other than the exceptions noted, it is a unanimous yes vote.
Dr. Malash.
Thank you, Mr. Ovadia. So in 15.2, termination of employment non-certificated, among some other retirements and folks leaving the district is Don Bart's retirement. The board just approved his retirement effective July 1st. Mr. Bart? Mr. Bart is our Director of Operations. July 1st will take him to almost 20 years that he has served the school district in the community of Cherry Hill. When Don and I sat down and spent a little bit of time together last week talking, one of the things we talked about is there's very little that's gone on in this district over the last 20 years that doesn't have Don Bart's fingerprints on it in some way, and in some shape and in some form. He has assumed such a wide variety of responsibilities for the school district in terms of supervision of different departments, overseeing of projects, managing projects in a variety of different areas. That it's just been absolutely incredible. But again, very little has gone on in this district that he has not directly influenced. And as a community member, as a parent whose children came through the district, as the spouse of a teacher in the district, he has been intimately involved in everything that has gone on. He will sorely be missed and truly be missed by so many. And one of the things that people get to see Mr. Bart at things, a little bit in the back, making sure that things are working. People have not seen some of the incredible things that he has done for probably a generation and a half of students that have gone through Thomas Paine as a little fairy in the background to provide opportunity and provide materials and provide costumes and provide experiences for students that for a variety of reasons may not have had those opportunities. So truly, he's been a blessing to our school district and will truly be missed, come beginning of July. So congratulations, Don.
Next up is new business. Is there any new business a board member would like to bring in to discuss this evening? Okay. Old business. Tonight, we will continue our discussion of middle school redistricting. All right, so just wanted to start us off along this path. It has been a lifetime now. It's been about 2 years that as a board, we have discussed redistricting. Of course, for us to discuss it 2 years, it took at least 6 months before that to get the direction started. As we did this through a deliberative process, we codified the direction the board would be taking last October as we had adopted what was unanimously approved by the board in district goals. Many of those members are here on the stage tonight. We have had multiple town halls, very valuable. We have heard literally from thousands of community members and from many stakeholder groups, many individuals, many communities, many neighborhoods. We have been listening, and it will take us to continue to listen to really continue along the path that we are on. Our administrative recommendation has shifted since last we were together. And of course, as a board, for those that watched the 2 hours with Mr. Adams from New Jersey School Boards Association, our power is only as we congregate together and make group decisions. I and any of us outside of this role and up here and together don't have any specific additional power than anyone else. After weighing all of the feedback from the board and from the community, people have been very generous in offering feedback. And I believe we're all interested in the best interests of our children. Now, our administration is now recommending option 2. Option 2 meets the varied criterion that we have spoken about at length, most recently at our February 8th meeting. We know that it's important to the community and to us that students will attend middle school in geographic proximity to their homes. We do not want to split a school, a sending school, going to middle school. We feel this creates a perception of disadvantage and perhaps actual disadvantage as well. This community is not behind a 6th grade center at this point in our life as a township. Now, the timeline for this decision remains as it's been for a while. This will be 2 Septembers from now that you would see any kind of change. That would be the 23-24 school year. The desire of the board, as expressed most ardently at February 8th, was for students to finish middle school where they begin it. And it's important to recognize that our Board of Education and our administration have vital roles in this community. They are not the same roles. For those that were able to see Mr. Adams, we do start with the what, and that's really where we end. The how is up to our professionals and our staff, and together we try to do at all times the best for our community and most specifically for our students. Now, in that sense, I do want to return us to option 2. That is now the administration's recommendation. I am supportive of that recommendation, and what I'd like to do, with the permission of this board, is to do a straw poll where we evaluate what we've seen and what we've heard, and option 2 that is being recommended to us by our professionals. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern. And I guess raise your hand if you're okay with going in this direction for this evening. Okay. To take a straw poll to support option 2, as is the administration's recommendation. To take the straw poll. Cool? All right. Cool. Does the Sugars do this? Or do I? To take the. Okay, I will do that. Thank you, Mrs. Sugars, for that clarification. I am in favor. Ms. Stern.
Yes, I am in favor of option 2.
Mrs. Tom.
Yes.
Mrs.
Well, I
Fleischer.
will go out.
Mrs.
Yes,
Fleischer.
I'm in favor of option 2.
Mr. Mayor,
I am in favor of option 2.
Dr. Rude,
Yes, option 2 seems good.
Mrs. Arroyo,
Yes.
Ms. Friedel.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Dr. Malash, does that help?
Yes, that's very direct.
Okay. Next item of new business. Oh,
I'm sorry, Mr. Avadia. I just.
yes,
wanna-
Mr.
I just want to clarify too, that the other two pieces you mentioned, which I think the sixth grade center option was off the table very clearly last meeting. But I just want to clarify that the students finish where they start. Is that now included in our straw poll? Is that solidified according to your comments? I just want to clarify that if that's now decided without an official vote, but from a straw poll perspective and a just, support perspective.
Yes, and I can tell you, Ms. Stern, that based on option 2, that students will be able to complete where they begin.
Thank you.
Dr. Rude.
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to do it exactly, but I'd like to revisit Road Forward for an additional comment. I feel like time got swept away from us there as we were having some final thoughts. Do I need to make a motion or anything to revisit that, or
No.
we can just talk about it?
You're fine. Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to, so talk closer to this. There seemed to be some confusion regarding contact tracing, and I do recognize personal opinion that the person-to-person contact tracing would be very hard. However, what I've heard from the community through their emails is that there's still a significant portion of the population that is concerned about their health and safety, and I really feel it's important for them to know if there is a case that they need to worry about, like, so within their classroom. And I would like, I don't know, I would like to suggest that, I know you haven't fully put together your plan for this, but as you do, I'd like to very strongly consider from a right to know kind of platform that that there's some way to let parents know that there's been a case. And that way they are informed to make their own health decisions as we move forward with the optional masking.
Thank you, Dr. Root. Yes, as Mrs. Wethington said, Mrs. Wethington will convene with Mrs. Case Abner, who's our lead nurse for the district, and they'll be in touch with the folks through Virtual Health and work out the development of what that looks like. We'll send additional information out to the community. We'll follow the same process that we have been between now and March the 7th. If there's going to be any changes, what those are will be articulated. An additional statement will come out from the district as well.
Thank you, Dr. Melish.
Ms. Stern?
I just have another item for old business. Now that we have, I think, pretty much clarified where we all are at in terms of the middle school redistricting, there's obviously a lot of tandem discussion about elementary school reconfiguration. And I know that board members have, we've all been kind of thinking about that and talking about that, looking at that. I just want to say that I'm happy that we're going to be addressing that at the next meeting. That's going to be kind of our next step. And it's very much in tandem with consideration of this to really look at, how do we address some of the overcrowding concerns with, and also some of the very wonky borders. Or sending districts. So I'm just, looking forward to that and just clarifying that that's a piece of this.
Thanks, Ms. Stern. Yeah, for my own just 2 cents, we need to, as I mentioned earlier, this has been a fairly long process. We need to revisit the moment of looking at the elementary school math. And I believe that's the intent through Committee of the Whole and Policy and Legislation on March 8th. So please do come back. I hope we've not scared you off. So the next thing I wanted to bring to old business is we had a wonderful presentation. Dr. Morton headed up, and we had student participation and volunteers and staff about school start times. And what I'd like to suggest to the board is that we think about a timeline that can make some sense. And I just wanted to make sure we were, before we really asked administration to put this in motion, that we were of a single accord, or at least that I can get 4 more votes. The question is, can we say, well, let me take it back. Dr. Morton said we need more community input, and I believe that's the case. The methodology we have to that would be, and I've talked to Mrs. Arroyo about this direction. I believe we're of one accord. To do a thought exchange, to do a town hall to really get at all the issues at play next month in March. To follow that up as we've done in other issue-based things with a thought exchange that will run for several weeks. And then to bring back maybe in April to find some sort of direction as a board that we can pursue. Now, if there were to be changes, as of last meeting, it seems like the earliest that could be would be 23-24 school year. Now, okay, so I would like to suggest that we do a straw poll on this concept. Do I have a second to do the straw poll? Just do it. Okay, forget it. Yeah. I'm gonna, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Paul Green. Well, Paul Green has given me good advice. So I'm just gonna do a straw poll. I am in favor of this. We'll go the opposite way. Ms. Friedel.
Can you repeat what you are straw polling? What is the question?
Yes, the straw poll, I'm so glad you asked. The straw poll is that we schedule a March town hall about start times. Have that town hall, follow it up with a thought exchange where the community can weigh in with the various issues surrounding school start times. Bring it back to April where we as a board can decide some direction with an eye toward the first possible change being 23-24. That is the straw poll.
Okay, I'm sorry. And so the town hall would be K through 12th grade, not just high school.
Yes.
Yes, I'm good with that.
Mrs. Arroyo?
Yes.
Dr. Rude?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mrs. Fleischer?
Yes.
Mrs. Tong?
Yes.
Ms. Stern?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Would anyone else like to bring old business tonight? Seeing none, okay. All right, folks, you have made it now to the second public comment. Now, everything I said for the first public comment still holds. However, at this point, you may speak, please identify, wait a second. You may speak on any issue, just say your name and municipality. We will alternate between in the room and online, and it is our convention to begin in the room.
Nick Gaudio, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I would like to thank the Road Forward Committee for doing the right thing and recommending that the full Board of Ed ends the mask mandate. I would also like to thank the full board for listening to our community regarding the corrections to the testing mandate email that were communicated to all of you via email and phone calls over the past 2 weeks. We are all human and make mistakes, and oversights do happen, often without malicious intent. And by responding affirmatively and not defensively to requests and corrections from the community, a confidence in your willingness to listen to the residents of our township is gradually being restored. That brings me to the topic of the February 18th email titled "Important Notice Regarding Masking in Schools." The district stated that a federal mandate still requires all students, bus drivers, and staff riding on school buses to be masked at all times during their time on the bus. In the February 17th email titled "New Jersey School COVID Testing Program," you stated members of the community asked for verification of this requirement with regards to the previously referenced Executive Order 253. Just as the district admitted that it was incorrect to reference 253 with regards to testing students, after being corrected by members of the community, the district is also incorrect about the reference to the federal mandate with regards to masking on school buses. In January 2021, President Biden issued Executive Order 13998, called Promoting COVID-19 Safety in Domestic and International Travel. Under that executive order, he announced mask requirements for all forms of public transportation as defined in 49 USC 5302, which is United States Code. However, 49 USC 5302 states under Section 15, Public Transportation, the term public transportation, subsection B, does not include Part 4, school bus service. In other words, the federal mandate unambiguously states that school bus service is not included in the mask requirement for public transportation. I ask you to please review these details and send a correction via email noting the lack of federal or state mandates for masks to be worn on school buses and reiterating that masks are optional on buses as well as in the school buildings. And finally, with spring break less than 2 months away, families are starting to plan their much coveted trips to spend time together, visit grandparents and other family members, and explore various parts of our beautiful country outside of the tri-state area. The January 21st, 2022 revised quarantine guidelines for unvaccinated individuals remains in effect, singling out and punishing families who choose not to have their children undergo a voluntary medical procedure. This discriminatory policy ostracizes children for their medical differences and creates segregation within our school community. Please drop this policy in conjunction with the removal of the other COVID-related restrictions. Thank you for your time and dedication.
Thank you. We will return to the line with Renee Trefane.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you to the road. Oh, my name is Renee Trefane and I am in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I wanted to say thank you to the Road Forward Committee for promoting autonomy and enforcing the parents' rights to choose whether or not to mask their children. Also, thank you to everyone for listening to the concerns of our community and choosing not to send Kingston students to BEC.
Thank you. Next, we'll go in the room.
Hi, good evening. Gina Winters, Cherry Hill. I want to talk about the option that you've selected to discuss for middle school redistricting, which is option 2, which would send ARP Elementary School to Carusi. The committee that discussed these options correctly identified that sending ARP to Carusi makes Carusi inequitably large compared to the other 2 middle schools, especially Rosa. There are several problems with this. The first major problem being that the special education community was unanimous at the town hall discussing how they wanted special education programs to be represented at all 3 middle schools so that special ed students would not have to be bused all over the district to access their education. If Carusi is huge, it's going to be really hard to house a variety of special education programs at that school. And that was something that you said in the last meeting was going to be a priority of the board. Secondly, thing with Carusi being that large, it is not just about total enrollment, but it's about the class size. We all know that class size is one of the biggest things that affects students' education. This board has discussed that certain students will need extra support in math going forward. This was brought out in the Start Strong assessment that you all discussed and presentation on that. And also with the new math pathways that are being implemented, those math pathways will start in the middle school level. In order for students to be successful with the new math pathways, they may require additional math support. If Carusi is inequitably large, if those classes are larger than at the other 2 middle schools, there may not be sufficient resources to provide students with the support they need to succeed. And I fear that the interaction between the math skills that were lost during the pandemic, as shown through the Start Strong assessment, and the change in the math pathways, which are merging tracks together for math, may have an extra detrimental effect on the Carusi community. I also want to talk about Carusi status as a Title I school. I would really want to make sure that Carusi is not going to lose that Title I benefit if Russell Ney Elementary School as a whole is sent over to Carusi, and how that impacts those needed resources for Carusi students to be successful. As you all know, I have put forward a proposal for the community that would allow Russell Knight Elementary School the ability to split between Carusi and Rosa. The reason I said this was because in option 1, the district identified Rosa as the neighborhood school for ARC. I think if you allow ARC to naturally split between Rosa and Carusi the way it has always done, it equalizes enrollment, equalizes resources, and allows all Cherry Hill students the equal opportunity to go to their neighborhood middle school if they so choose. Please consider this option going forward. Thank you so much for your continued attention and consideration.
Thank you. We're going to return to the line for Dr. Podowitz.
Hi, my name is Jeff Hoditz. Whoever just spoke, I'm sorry I missed the name. Yeah, I agree with her. She sounded really good. Okay, that's all I have to say. Whoever that was, sorry about that. On February 13th, 2022, I sent an email to our school board, and I asked the school board, and please refer to that email. I'm skipping. I referred to an Education Week article that said at the time and it was entitled New Jersey voters resoundingly reject property tax hikes, and Cherry Hill voters approved a huge 13% increase in our tax levy. That's 30 years ago. That is 30 full years ago, and we've been cheated ever since. There's something else that you'll find. You can find an article dated March 17th, 1990, published in the New York Times, written by Mr. Robert Hanley, entitled Florio's No Growth Budget Forces Schools to Scramble. Cherry Hill lost $5.3 million in direct state aid in education that year. School services were cut and taxes were raised. But the New York Times did mention that for schools in Camden County, which was Governor Florio's base, they actually received an increase. Our county received an increase of $14 million. Other counties were also funded better. However, Bergen County was reduced by $10.1 million, Morris County by $9.6 million, Monmouth County by $9.5 million, and Middlesex by $6.3 million. Note that Cherry Hill, our district alone, lost $5.3 million. And when you total that with the $14 million that were gained in Camden County, that means Camden County, when you eliminate Cherry Hill, actually gained $19 million. Good for Camden County, but Cherry Hill, also part of Camden County, wasn't so good. And I have documented that over the years we've been, we've been hurt by what's been going on, and that's been John Tremmel talked about passing the buck. Well, the passing the buck for 30 years has been it. That's 3 generations of students. And our leaderships, that's you guys, have done nothing at all to stop that. That was successful. Cherry Hill Special Ed PTA, John Tremble spoke it. They did what they did their best to try to get the school board administration to really stand up. You didn't, all right? I don't see that changing.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye.
Podowitz. We appreciate it. Next in the room.
And Einhorn, Cherry Hill. Forgive me, I wrote most of this before your announcement this evening, but I'm going to go on. You need to establish boundaries within the elementary schools first to achieve true geographical middle schools. You do not start in the middle and work yourself backwards. And I really don't like the word parallel elementary districting. You always start at the beginning. Since none of you have any history, in 1999, the same overcrowding in elementary schools led to moving 6th graders into a middle school environment and adding Rosa as a 3rd middle school. In order to get students to Rosa and satisfy state law, it was made into a magnet school with a lottery. It didn't happen in a year. The social and emotional impact that you as a board presented to the Kingston community is unfathomable to me, especially with the words that were used, economically challenged. It is enough that we constantly have in this town, East is better than West. We are a fine community. And it doesn't affect most of you in any way because you do not live in the western part of Cherry Hill. You removed the Rosa lottery before you had a plan in place. And then you told administration to figure it out. You plan to change start times, and I assume you expect the same from administration. And apparently, most of you seem to have forgotten in your discussions how a passed bond can impact redistricting plans as well. I would really appreciate it if you continue or try to follow your own policy of equal educational opportunity and provide the services to the Title I schools that are all on the west side of Cherry Hill. I really get tired of feeling like I'm an immigrant pulling into Ellis Island and seeing the words on the Statue of Liberty that say, giving your tired, your poured, your huddle masses learning to breathe. We're breathing just fine over here, but we could use a lot of additional resources. We don't need busing. We just need help to achieve success for all of our students. And I will beg you once again, slow it down. Please do your homework because Rome was not built in a day. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll turn to the line for Angela McNeil. Angela, if you're speaking, we do not hear you. Okay, perhaps Angela can rejoin. We'll next go to the line, Amanda Greenstein.
Hi, I'm Amanda Greenstein, 2004 graduate of Cherry Hill West, mother to a Berkeley student and a Kingston Elementary student. Obviously, my original comments have changed based on the board's consideration of option 2 for redistricting, and I would like to thank you for that. But echoing Ms. Einhorn's sentiments, as a lifelong Cherry Hill resident, born and raised, and then my family and I deciding to move back here to raise our children here, I think it's time for the East-West rivalry to finally end. We are one community. Unfortunately, we have a very unbalanced board that is highly reflective of one side of town. So I ask you members that sit on the east side to put yourselves in our shoes as West Side parents. When I moved back here in 2013, I chose the West Side and specifically Kingston neighborhood because as a student who only came to West and was in private Catholic school during my other years, it was very hard to fit in as a new high school student amongst the other students. And the one thing that boiled down to me was the Kingston kids are lifers. And with my third grader, I see that we are lifers in this community, and anything to disrupt Kingston, especially taking them to the furthest middle school, would have been incredibly detrimental. But I thank you for reconsidering and for hearing us, and great job, Kingston community, for being so outspoken the last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move into the room.
Rick
Gentleman
Short,
in front.
Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Thank you, board, for lifting the mask mandate. And I do concur with Mr. Gaudio on his questioning about the federal laws. I do ask the board, why are we not mandating that bus windows are cracked and not making it mandated for the contracts? Also, I want to also concur with Ms. Einhorn. She's a stellar person. She's been a president board. She knows what she's talking about. She's a genius. But it all comes back to one thing, this obsession with this district's equity. Yep, even when the other presenters tonight came up, there's a difference between equity and equality in education, and I don't believe this board understands that and continues to push these certain narratives in the district. Another example of the narrative now that has come about is microaggressions. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's over 130,000 schools in the United States, but somehow we have microaggression problems. This equity and microaggressions and all these far out problems that don't exist keep popping up. And I just don't get it, because you've destroyed Rosa by killing the lottery and by saying that it wasn't equitable. So at first there was option 1, option 2, and option 3, and they were all equity plans. And the equity plans didn't work the first round. You were looking at options 4 and 5. Now you're back to equity number 2, which is not fair for equity number 1, which is not fair for equity number 3. So again, equity is destroying this town, and all it does is discriminate. It wants to make everyone the same, and it hampers and does not want success. Equity will kill this town over a period of time. It's been injected in the math curriculum. You see it right now. How can equity possibly be in a math course? Please, God, explain this to me. And Mr. Avadia, your last comments before, you said, oh, show the utmost respect and don't say the word stupid. Well, in all due respect, I agree with Dr. Rod. On January 25th, he called the CDC and the state of New Jersey Health Department stupid at a board meeting. And guess what? I agree with him. I totally agree with him. So take it as it is. But I would not redistrict. It's too much on the mental health of the children and the parents who've come up here crying. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask two things. One, Angela McNeil is now sort of down, but I'd like to give her a chance. I just want to say, Mr. Short, that the young lady in the front row who spoke earlier is very proud of Rosa. I do not believe, and I don't think it's at all accurate, that we've destroyed Rosa. And I want her to know that, you know, you have a school to be proud of still. Mr. Short and I agree on some things, obviously don't agree on all, but you have a school to be proud of, and it has not been destroyed. All right, moving on to Angela McNeil, if we can. But it appears we can. Okay. Yeah. I'm willing, Angela. Okay. My predecessor's name was Lori Neary, and she appears next on our list. Oh, yep, yes, okay. Lori Neary is next up.
Thank you. Laurie Neary, Cherry Hill. Just a couple things. I wanted to go back to some comments that Gina had made regarding special education under option 2. And it's more of a question, if that could be a follow-up conversation or release, just the impact to the programs and any plans for future programming changes amongst special education, how that will change. And then with the start times, if we will now be doing a town hall and there will be future conversation, will the committees now include stakeholders from both within district administration and staff and community members from elementary and middle schools to further that conversation? I have concern that they weren't present or really part of that conversation, and the impacts are dramatic. Education doesn't happen in a silo within society, so those changes can certainly interject dramatic chaos into the system if we don't understand the impacts on all sides and what that looks like. So I would just like to know if that's also going to be a follow-up. And I agree with the sentiments of others. I do think, and this has been a long-going conversation since when I first joined the board, so over 3 years ago, it started with the ad hoc committee as an output from the last bond that redistricting be looked at so you could determine who would be in the schools to know how you would need to change them. Do you need 3 classrooms at Rosa to be built, or 2 or none? So until some of that work is done at both middle and elementary, I think it would be a little challenging to make final determinations. But I would say I agree with Mrs. Einhorn that it's not a race to implement. So we can implement over time and be more deliberate. Same thing with start times. It's not a race to implement. This is not legacy building These are all our kids, and 65% of our student population has a big say. So I want to be mindful that we are thinking of them in this decision-making, and we are deliberate and we take the time. Not everything do we need to be the trendsetter. We will be one of the first. So if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. To our friend Angela online, I'm going to suggest that you call in. Perhaps we could help with that. But we'd love to hear what you have to say. We just want to make sure it's technically possible. Moving to the room.
Hi, my name is Jessica Simpkins. I am a Cherry Hill resident. I have a 4-year-old at Barkley and a 2nd grader at Kingston. I feel that Barkley is often overlooked in a lot of the considerations of the board and the administration. And I think that it's warranted to consider keeping the masks at Barkley until those children are eligible to be vaccinated. I'm aware that not every family is going to choose to get their child vaccinated, but I feel that those children are at a greater risk until they're eligible. The understanding now is that that's only a couple of months away. And after 2 years of masking, I don't think a few more months is too much to ask. My 4-year-old has a genetic disorder that puts him at high risk. And I'm concerned about his safety at school. He loves Barkley and he needs the services that are there. And I can't not let him go. And I don't want to worry every day that I send him. And I also wanted to just mention in regards to option 2, it is my understanding that Johnson Elementary students actually have a choice between 2 middle schools. It's a lesser known fact. And I think that if that's considered for the ARC students as well, that might help some of the capacity issues that we're seeing in option 2. I know there's a lot of ARC students that love to go to Carisi, and there's a lot of ARC students that love going to Rosa. And if they're able to make that choice, that might help some of the issues that we're looking at in that option. Thank you very much.
Dr. Malash, for Jessica, who can she leave her information with for a follow-up?
Yeah, if you see Mrs. Wilson, Barbara Wilson, our public information officer, if you give her your email address, we'll get somebody to reach out directly.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Malash. Next, we'll go to the line for Kristen.
Thank you, Kristen Master, Cherry Hill. It is encouraging to hear that over 95% of staff is fully vaccinated. Unfortunately, only approximately 30% of students aged 5 to 12 are currently fully vaccinated. To remove masking in schools right now is problematic. I ask that you call a board vote tonight to accept or reject the recommendation of the Road Forward Committee to make mask optional in our school. I do respect the time allotted by these community members. I'm sure a passionate group, but perhaps not professionally qualified to make these decisions autonomously. In your letter, the recommendation to remove masking referenced guidance from the CDC and the New Jersey Department of Health. Each of these entities still emphatically recommends masking indoors, especially in school settings. Please keep masks in schools as one protection measure. Additionally, continue to layer with additional mitigation measures of testing, notification, and contact tracing. If you know someone testing positive was in close contact with another student or staff member and specifically don't disclose, you are culpable. We do have medically fragile and immune compromised students and staff with underlying conditions in our schools. This could be disastrous for them. I cannot understand why we would not utilize every mitigation measure we have to protect the health and safety of all students and staff. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We'll go to the room.
Good evening, Ashley Cameron Gleason, Cherry Hill. I've been a lifelong resident of Cherry Hill, and I am a product of the Cherry Hill Public Schools of the 80s and 90s. I am not yet a parent, but I am a taxpayer, and I'm also here on behalf of my future children. Many of the policies this body has imposed on Cherry Hill's kids and parents over the last 2 years have inadvertently bred harassment, intimidation, and bullying by New Jersey DOE's own definition. Page 9 of the DOE's guidance on the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act defines it as any gesture, written, verbal, or physical act, or any electronic communication that is reasonably perceived as being motivated either by an actual or perceived characteristic, such as race, color, religion, or by any other distinguishing characteristic. Takes place on school property, that disrupts or interferes with the rights of other students, and that causes physical or emotional harm, results in the insult or demeaning of any student or group of students, and creates a hostile educational environment. I believe that this body and the members who comprise it genuinely want to do what's right by our students in our schools. I don't think you want to enact policy that leads to bullying or intimidation. COVID has been a unique experience for everyone. And with the passage of time, we sometimes discover that what we once thought best was in fact the wrong path, littered with unintended consequences. As more discussions begin around where the district is going for life post-COVID, it's natural time to evaluate where we've been. A couple areas where I respectfully believe Cherry Hill Schools has gotten it wrong. The incessant in-school encouraging of kids to consume emergency use authorization drugs and clinics that don't require the full informed consent of all legal guardians, pushing things like candy and coloring books at kids in exchange for compliance. Separate rules for unvaccinated kids that don't apply to the vaccinated, such as Mr. Gaudios mentioned, the discriminatory travel quarantine policies. The near implementation of mandatory testing to participate in extracurricular activities. Understand this was a mistake, respectfully suggest some increased due diligence. And the mask mandates that discriminate against students who cannot wear masks and also intimidate those who don't want to. I am pleased with the Road Forward Committee's recommendation, and I would encourage the board to adopt that recommendation. What will the Cherry Hill school system look like someday when I'm fortunate enough to have a child to consider enrolling? I don't know, but I know it shouldn't look like the invidious climate of the last 2 years. It should look like the high quality, inclusive, and diverse learning environment that I was fortunate enough to graduate from. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to the line for Jared. Jared, I believe you have to unmute. Okay, we're going to move on to the line to A. A, it is your turn. It is your turn to unmute at this stage. A.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes.
This is Dr. McGee, Cherry Hill. I'm calling in today to stand in support of those that are asking the board to keep masks in place. Again, as stated, there are children that are immune compromised that are not being taken into consideration. There are students that are facing medical surgeries and things, and they're not being taken into consideration. Not only that, you have students that have mental and psychological disorders, and they're not being taken into consideration. Already going into schools and buildings cause them stress and anxiety that is above all that they can handle. When they think about the idea of having to go into a building where it is an option for people to be around them that are unvaccinated and unmasked, it just compounds it. I myself am a parent of 3 children in Cherry Hill. I have children that do not eat at your schools because they don't feel safe. I have a child who tried to walk out of an elementary school because he does not feel safe. 6, 7, and 8-year-olds should not be having to deal with not feeling safe in school. Cherry Hill prides itself on creating places that are safe, happy, and everyone has the right to an education. They don't have this right because all day long, they're wondering if they're going to get sick. All day long, they're wondering who's keeping them safe. And so I ask you to reconsider that. Reconsider contract tracing, because that's the only way we know if our children are being exposed. Our family had to suffer with COVID for 8 weeks because one of our children was exposed. We took away the ability for them to stay home remote in this cocoon that they need to be in. And then we give them the option of homebound, but it's only accessible for 60 days. I urge the board, please reconsider that as well. Homebound should not be limited in this time of crisis to a period of 60 days. The only other thing I ask the board to consider is, where is the educational audiologist? 2 of my children are hearing impaired and all of their stuff is taken care of by tech. And sometimes they don't know the latest and the greatest things that could help my children not feel like they're outcast in school. And so therefore reducing their social anxiety. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll turn next to the room.
Cherry Hill parent. First, I would like to thank the board and the Road Forward Committee for hearing our opinions as parents on masking and making a decision that reflects our beliefs. It's obviously a complex issue with a lot of sides, but putting it back into the parents' hands to make the right choice for their children, I believe is the right choice. I am, however, concerned with some of the other points in the masking email that was sent to us. And more broadly as with the policy making as a whole. First, it was erroneously stated that masking is mandated on buses federally. It is not. The executive order that calls for masking on public transportation, Executive Order 1399-8, specifically says that masking is mandatory on public transport as defined by U.S. Code Title 49, Section 5302. Which specifically says that school bus services are not public transportation. If you need further confirmation on that, I did email the superintendent today with those links, and I would be more than willing to send it to each and every board member. But between this, the email with the executive order 253 and the testing of athletes and stuff, and I mean this as respectfully as possible, but I really think there needs to be a little bit more due diligence with how we are crafting policy. We need to make sure that we're reading the mandates that we are, asserting or guiding this policy, because there's 2 big misses there. I also respectfully ask that the Road Forward Committee, take into this new information and update their guidance as follows. Besides that, I also have concerns. We talked about the taking field trips to places where masks might be mandated, and that's one thing. I'm more concerned that potentially there could be field trips where vaccines are mandated, and in my opinion, that would be highly discriminatory and somewhat coercive. I would like to make sure that my thoughts are heard on that. If we're taking field trips, it should be accessible to all students, regardless of their status. Besides that, last thing I want to touch on is we talked a lot about the bullying and not bullying kids who aren't wearing masks. Absolutely, obviously, nobody's going to disagree with that. I would also like to hear it go the other way, that we're not going to bully the kids who aren't wearing masks. I have had a situation where my stepson came out of school very upset because a child told him that he wasn't wearing 2 masks, so he was going to die. That was crazy to me. I felt very bad for him, and I want to make sure that kids that aren't wearing masks aren't being treated like they're some vectors of disease. That's all I have. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Next, we're going to turn to the line for Carolina Bevitt.
This is you. Hi, Carolina Bevitt, Cherry Hill. I am in enthusiastic favor of optional masking. And as we accept COVID as part of our daily lives, I expect more restrictions and interventions to be lifted, such as socially distanced lunches and travel quarantines. I also expect the district to uphold its own policy against harassment, intimidation, and bullying by not coercing, shaming, or excluding any student based on personal medical choices made by themselves or their parents. I'd also like to say that I agree with Mrs. Einhorn, Mrs. Winters, and I think it was Mrs. Greenstein, I don't remember her last name, on the comments they made about middle school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in the room.
Good evening, David Kuzmanich, Cherry Hill. This is my first time here. Thank you for hearing me. I'm very passionate. My son is a 5th grader in Woodcrest, and I thoroughly believe in reading up of lot. One of the policies that you guys put into place a couple of years ago, I'm going to read a paragraph. maybe not some of the new board members know about it. The board commits the school district to promote the success of Black and African American and Hispanic Latinx students, and also Indigenous people, Pacific Islanders, and Southeast Asian students, parentheses, i.e. students who have a racial identity other than white, end of parentheses, and to actively work to eliminate institutional and structural policies, practices that perpetuate inequalities for these students. So for some of the board members that have never read that before, consideration, please just remove what's in the parentheses. I teach my son, if it doesn't sound right with any particular race in there, then it's not right. Just change the word from white to some other race and see how it sounds. So the other part, Mr. Gaudio and another young lady talked about the school busing and the masks being not public transportation. Try being a middle-aged man to get on a school bus. It's not public transportation. And with the masks, I believe we talked about people who want to wear masks in school, teachers having rights. I heard that quite a few times tonight. Again, the students that don't want to wear masks also have rights. And we also talked about not bullying the other direction a few times tonight. And that is my main concern. I sat here with my nose exposed and you bullied me. So I appreciate not having my son bullied. I appreciate the nurses not teaching my son that spit particles carry COVID, because he came home and told me that. All right. When that happens, you're assuming every person around you has COVID. And no one believes that. You don't have COVID. I don't believe you have COVID. None of these people here have COVID or they wouldn't be here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on the line, we have Joe Ham.
Hi, my name is Joanna Kim. I'm a Cherry Hill resident with a student at Rosa and ARK. And I just wanted to say that I agreed with Gina, who spoke earlier. The option 2 for middle school redistricting, it doesn't offer ARK the opportunity for a neighborhood school that's being offered to every other Cherry Hill elementary school. So I'm hoping that this can be addressed prior to the board making their final decision. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next in the room.
Hi, Andrea Weigel, Cherry Hill. First, I want to talk about the letters that were sent out. The first being February 11th, because I was very confused. Because the letter stated to be in compliance with Executive Order 253, the school district will elect to participate in a testing program. You have dealt with Executive Order 253 since August. You put that in the letter. How did you send a letter out knowing it was wrong? It makes me question everything that you do. Then you send out a letter, February 16th, saying, last sentence of paragraph 2, we therefore will not require any students be tested. Is this a fact? Is this going to be policy? Or are you going to change your mind? Testing healthy children to participate in anything school-related is bullying, harassment, and/or intimidation. You will cause psychological harm to children, making them vaccinated appear to have something wrong with them by separating them from the vaccinated with testing as a requirement to participate. You will cause emotional strain by testing them weekly or biweekly, and perhaps because we don't know the effects of constant testing, cause physical harm to them as well. In all that is going on in this pandemic, one truth remains. Children have never been at great risk for serious illness and death. Yet they are the most discriminated against by policies enacted in the name of health. I'm the voice of the children that I have and perhaps children whose parents will not speak up. It needs to end because the children are not at great risk. If an adult does not feel safe having an unvaccinated child around them, perhaps that adult needs to choose a new profession. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the line with Alana Yaris.
Alana Yaris, Cherry Hill. Dear board member, insert your email that you would like to send, click send. Get a response back within minutes that reads, "Thank you for your email. I can assure you that I have read it. In accordance with the provisions of New Jersey law and board policy, all responses to your questions and concerns will come from the board president and/or the superintendent on behalf of the Board of Education. Thank you again for taking the time to contact me." Now, I know that you can receive email on your phone. I don't know if you choose to receive your district email on your phones, but I also receive email on my phone and I cannot read email that quickly. So although I'm sure at some point you did read my email, setting up an automatic response from all board members to come back saying that they've already read your email seems a little inconsiderate to the community. I understand that the board as a whole cannot respond and speak on behalf of the board, and that it is the board president who can speak on behalf of the board. But I would appreciate if for myself and other members in the community who, when they email you, and I know that you receive a lot of emails because we are a district of almost 11,000 students, and there are a lot of people in the community who are very passionate and submit emails to you, that instead of sending back an automatic response, if you could take the time to respond to emails saying that you've read them, or if the board president could get back to any and all emails that is sent their way so that community members can feel that they've been heard instead of ignored, because most of the time that is how many community members feel, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go to the room again, Ms. Yaris, if there's an email that you've sent that has not been responded to, I apologize. I do try to get back to everyone within 24 hours. It often happens after 10 o'clock at night, but if I have missed you by accident, I do apologize. But please send me what you were looking for comment about. Thank you. Back to the room.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Sharman. I live in Cherry Hill. I'm a parent of a high school junior at West. I'm also a registered nurse and have a bachelor's degree in healthcare administration, which also deals with public health. I am one of the many parents that called you regarding the intimidating bullying email that was sent out regarding the mandatory COVID testing on our healthy students regarding activities and sports. I am very happy that you acknowledge and apologize for your egregious error that you made. Myself and family and my son want to thank you for also making a fair decision and a reasonable decision regarding the maskings. Therefore, it will not disrupt or interfere with the orderly operation of school and the rights of our students. I also wanted to extend to you a little bit of information. You guys have been giving much information to our kids in schools, and there's been a lot of talk, like I said, about masks and unvaccinated and those who don't want to wear masks, and there's more bullying that goes on with the staff and the students regarding the not use of masks or not being vaccinated. Based off your New Jersey School Board of HIB definitions, one of them being that a reasonable person knows that physical harm, emotional harm, as well as fear causes harm to students. Please acknowledge your own rules. I would also like to thank you. I would also like to talk to you about COVID vaccine mandates that I have a fear that's going to be coming soon. I'm hoping that you will use your same reasonable, fair judgment that you used for the masking and the COVID testing. Mandatory COVID vaccines will also violate your HIB New Jersey Board definitions as evidenced by creating a hostile education environment, which will interfere with students' education and making students victims of harassment, intimidation, bullying due to students' perceived religion, medical disabilities, and other characteristics. I am aware that you consider the recommendations of the New Jersey Board of Health and the CDC, but consideration does not mean mandate. The roles of the CDC and the Board of Health are only there to help educate and advise. The CDC and the state boards of health have a long history of being pressured in the past by the government to promote their own political agendas. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up yourself and look up the history of public health. During the COVID pandemic, the CDC has not been transparent, and in recent reports of today, it was reported that the CDC is cherry picking what information it feels the public should know. This is a violation of transparency. The COVID vaccines is only approved, the only approved COVID vaccine is the Comirnaty. The Pfizer vaccine, as stated in their fact sheets, is still under emergency use authorization. This is key because emergency use vaccines are not ethical and are illegal and they cannot be mandated. So please make sure that you have choice for these students. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy C. is next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cindy C. I'm a Cherry Hill parent of two, Cindy Kogan, and I want to speak on behalf of the masks issue. As of February 21st, the American Academy of Pediatrics continues to recommend universal masking in school. I strongly believe that it's unfair for the children at Barclay or children at home who are 5 and under that do not have the option to be vaccinated at this time to be subjected to their siblings or classmates unmasked and possibly bringing something home. I think that the board should consider waiting until those children have the opportunity to get the vaccine, just like all the other children in the school district, before taking the masks away. I think it's entirely too early. It's still a pandemic, and it's still clear that masks reduce both the risk of spread and contracting COVID-19. Many of the classes at Beck, where my son goes, they don't have windows, unable to properly ventilate, and children feel upset about this. I feel that COVID is not like the flu or the cold. It comes with the risk of long-term complications that we know nothing about yet. It's a very new virus, and it's unprecedented times. And I know everyone has COVID fatigue, but it's not over. And if you listen to the science and the medical professionals and the scientists, they believe that masks prevent spread. And I think that you should reconsider giving it the option, because I think children who are not going to wear them and children who are going to wear them are both going to be bullied either way. And I think that that is creating an unfair environment for children. They've been wearing them for long enough. Oftentimes children don't even realize they have them on when they get in the car, and people wear them for much longer times than children at school. So I feel that children should still be masked, and at least until the vaccine is available for our youngest members in our community, and also the immunocompromised and medically fragile family members, teachers, and staff. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the room.
Hi, Jennifer Nadio, Cherry Hill. Congratulations, you picked number 2. Isn't that great? But you said nothing about special education. What are we doing with it? Are we just going to have them segregated like they are right now? Cherry Hill Special Education PTA and the CPEG and many families came to your town hall, to the administration's town hall, and that nothing was said tonight on what's actually going on. And maybe if it was said, I couldn't hear because of the ionizer back there, but it didn't sound like anything was said about where our students in special education are going to go. On top of that confusion within the special education community is the middle school rescheduling changes. So about 10 years ago, families of students in special education sat in a meeting with an evaluator from Rider University that Mrs. Wethington brought in. Families honestly shared that they paid for tutors, and many students still could not read in middle school. By moving reading resource into ELA resource, it will not be beneficial to our students who struggle with reading. Families must know their rights at their IEP meetings. Families are calling to SEPTA with major concerns. It is slipping through. All sorts of information is out there, and it's coming to us. Parents are upset. So we need to clarify if reading in a middle school as a resource class or an LLD class, or not just to be during ELA. We are concerned that reading as a program during ELA due to curriculum for ELA. And then world language is not important to a student who can't read English. So what are we doing with that? There are also concerns that LLD students will be moved around instead of being in their specific classroom. Mrs. Mallory just stated that resource reading will be available as a class if indicated by an IEP. Most IEP meetings have already occurred in this district. And I understand that a letter is going to go out that a parent who doesn't know what they're signing is just going to sign. That's not fair. So most IEP meetings have already occurred, and we all need new IEP meetings instead of approving a letter. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the line where Angela McNeil is hopefully going to be able to participate.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yay, thank you. Hi, my name is Angela McNeil. I'm Cherry Hill. I have a fifth grader at Bret Harte and a kindergartner at Woodcrest. And I just wanted to share with you that I'm one of those gray area border streets. My son was registered at Bret Harte when he was in 2016 because that was the designation of my street. My other son, who's in kindergarten at Woodcrest, because our street designation changed in between both of our children being registered for school. So my question to the board is, where would someone like my older son, Arthur, where would he go to middle school? Because you're changing the elementary school designations while he's in elementary school. Does that mean he follows where the Woodcrest kids go, or would he follow where Bret Harte goes? And I'm not the only one who's like that. I've talked to several people within a couple block radius of me, and we're in a very gray area because we're right in between Woodcrest and Bret Harte. And it seems to change sometimes which schools they go to, which elementary schools. So I'd just like to make sure that that's taken into consideration when you're coming up with this plan, that you make a kind of a policy for people in a gray area like myself. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to the room.
Hey, good evening. How's everyone doing? My name's Shane Camardo. I have a 5-year-old son, Cole, who was formerly enrolled at Barkley Early Childhood Center. Unfortunately, the reason I'm saying formerly enrolled is because we were forced to pull him 2 weeks ago, and that was due to admitted abuse caused by the school. I sent an email to the board president advising I would be speaking on this today, as I didn't want any surprises. But most importantly, I didn't want what happened to my son to happen to anyone else's son here or anywhere. 3 years ago, my wife and I moved to Cherry Hill so my son Cole could attend Barkley. We heard it was the place to be for children on the spectrum. We purchased a house in Barkley. We were psyched, so excited that we finally got this opportunity to bring my son on the spectrum to the best school that New Jersey had. In October of 2021, we were sent an adorable video of my son holding hands with his classmate. Upon further review, though, we noticed there were pink objects strapped around his ankles. We went back in our class dojo archive and found that these were on him as he was climbing ladders, as he was attending class, and he was crawling through a tunnel. Later, it was confirmed that they were actually ankle weights. My wife sent an email to the OT because we did not give any sort of permission for this. We asked, were these put on him to slow him down? Cole's a quick little kid. The OT replied, yes. The OT admitted that he was wearing them for weeks, again, without our consent. Instantly, I called the principal and the social worker To the social worker's credit, she notified Miss Mallory, who, by the way, has been amazing throughout this. I set up a meeting with the school to address what happened and where we were to go from here. When I asked why these weights were put on my son, with little research, I was promised documentation. I'm still waiting for it, and that was October. These weights were on my child under the supervision of an OT, a teacher, and a principal. How does that happen and no one speak up? Due largely in part to the swift action of Miss Mallory and the relationship Cole gained with his classmates, we chose to keep him at Barkley. However, a little over a month ago, we noticed another change in our son. He went from a child who was ecstatic to attend school to one that cried and had to break down at the mention of school or his teacher's name. Something was off. After the school, now we check him every day. After school, he came home with severe bruising on his legs. No communication as to why from the teacher. Again, I found myself calling to report this. One bruise appears to be that of an adult thumbprint and only can be assumed that he was being forced to sit down by the severe bruising on his knees. Instead of communication, we got deleted from Class Dojo without notice. Both of these instances were over a period of short months, and because of that, I'm seeing a pattern. My ask from the board is to conduct an investigation into the leadership of Miss Rockhill and Barkley. This should never happen. No child should have to go through and be taken advantage of just because he can't speak and stick up for himself. You guys said that in Barkley, the line is where children develop a love of learning. I didn't see that here today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir, if you can leave your information also with, okay. I will say, and it's obviously not the point, but you may have misspelled my name. It happens daily at least. But okay, but feel free to email me. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Becky Springsworth on the line.
Hello, my name is Becky Springsworth from Barkley Farm, Jerry Hill. I currently have a first grader at Russell Knight and a sixth grader at Rosa. Tonight, I want to first thank you for prioritizing allowing students to finish their middle school career at their current school. My daughter has already made strong connections with staff and peers at Rosa, and their transition to Carusi in the middle of her middle school years would have been very disruptive to her academic, social, and emotional development. Before hearing the board's opinion on redistricting tonight, I had emailed in support of revisiting option 1 because it keeps my children attending the geographically closest middle school. This is very important to me as a working parent. Having my children at Rosa significantly decreases their daily bus commute, which also makes it easier for me to transport them to their community-based after-school activities. Neighborhood middle schools also make it easier for me to attend PTA meetings, conferences, and be an active parent in the school. I strongly believe that Russell Knight students should attend Rosa. This evening, you as a board have voiced your support for option 2. As eloquently stated by Gina Winters and others, this option has many disadvantages. It singles out A. Russell Knight as the only elementary school to not attend their geographically closest middle school. It also creates a great discrepancy in the enrollment numbers at the middle schools. I'm very concerned about the impact on class size as well as special education programming. I would encourage you to review the proposal that Mrs. Winters put forward, which would allow Russell Knight to naturally split between Carusi and Rosa. Thank you for considering these important issues for my children and the children of Cherry Hill.
Thank you. Back to the room.
Hi, my name is Mike Abrascato from Cherry Hill. I have 2 young kids in Sharp Elementary School. Forgive me, I'm a little hangry right now because I haven't had dinner yet. I've heard a couple of board members today say, why are they talking about the kids that don't want to wear their masks. And, they've been focusing on that and then saying the ones that want to wear their masks, they're saying they're going to get bullied. And it seems to me like from some of the conversations we've had up here and some of the past speakers, I think I'm not the only one in the room that thinks that the ones that are not going to wear their masks are going to be the ones that are going to get bullied by certain people. Again, these masks have been helpful to any of especially my younger kids. I have one in kindergarten, and I heard from my kindergarten teacher that it's really hard for her to teach these kids to, especially enunciation, because they cannot see her mouth. They cannot see words being voiced. the CDC actually recently just lowered speech guidelines for toddlers because of masks. 50 words had to be were supposed to be said by age 24 months. That was considered normal. Now it's 30 months. They lowered the bar. Also, a lot of talk about whether or not kids are getting vaccinated or not. Listen, it's parents' choice, it's kids' choice. If they don't want it, they don't want it. And I don't want it. I didn't want it for my kids. Unfortunately for this school district, you guys had vaccine clinics at my elementary school. And against my wishes, my wife signed the consent form and had my kids vaccinated. I know I emailed you about this back in November that I didn't want it happening to my kids. You actually wrote an email back to me saying that choosing to have your child vaccinated or choosing not to have your child vaccinated is something that you decide as a parent/family. This is not something that the school district will choose or decide. Again, you want to talk about science, the Lancet, which is a very popular, well-known, well-documented medical journal, stated today that natural immunity makes vaccine mandates irrelevant. I'm sorry that Ms. Ramos left. I think she said a comment earlier about learning about microaggression during math class. I'm just curious of what the square root of that was. What was the point of doing that in math class? Don't understand it. Other than that, I also heard that a couple other board members were saying that you can't control what the children are doing. Well, again, and that's talking about wearing masks being optional. 2 Sundays ago, I bet a lot of us in this room watched the Super Bowl. 75,000 people in a stadium cramped, not wearing masks, celebrities on all that stuff. My time's up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to the line, Jared Pasternak.
Hi there. I'm a parent of children in Cherry Hill Public Schools, as well as a practicing pediatrician in the community. I don't intend to comment on what is right and what is wrong when it comes to masking, as I don't think there will be any headway to be made. I'd like to thank the school board for their ability to take lots of views, both bohemian and more mainstream, into account, and appreciate their patience with listening to all the comments. I will be quick, as I know you want to go home, and I want to end my participation here as well. However, I feel like it would not be the right thing to do as an advocate for what I reckon is the majority opinion, to ask for the committee on Road Forward to please explain again, as was asked previously, how to reconcile their decision and what literature they looked at to provide for unmasking immediately versus the CDC's guidance, where the CDC director said as recently as 5 days ago, our guidance currently is that masking should happen in all schools right now. The American Academy of Pediatrics seems to agree with that as well. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And I'd like to understand where the data, what studies the committee looked at to come forth with such a conclusion that is so beyond what the mainstream scientific thinking is. I know there's a lot of emotion involved with this decision, but I'm asking for actual data and asking for transparency here, because I haven't seen that. In regards to contact tracing and masking and whether a child's masked or unmasked, I just don't see how you're going to be able to do that unless you're recording which kids are wearing masks and which aren't, which I know nobody wants to do in the district. Finally, I know we need to get these masks off the children. The time will come soon. I fear that we're being too hasty based on experiences just as little as a month ago. The volume was obscene in most pediatric offices. And I expect that if there is a further wave, that will continue. And I hope we never have another wave. I'm just asking for you to please review the science. Finally, I just want to thank the school district for instituting African American studies as part of the curriculum. As it's Black History Month, I just watched a movie, a documentary called Black Men in White Coats. And I think it's important to understand that there are fewer Black men now than in 1978 applying to medical school. And I think it's something really important for the community to understand that sharing experiences is not discriminatory towards anyone, but it's rather inclusive. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll return to the room.
Hi, Beth Becker. Oh, I'll wait for my, okay. A couple things. So the Road Forward Committee, I'm concerned about the unclear decision regarding the contact tracing. Families cannot make informed decisions without contact tracing, and parental choice seems to be the oft-repeated phrase of the night, right? So I thank the Road Forward Committee for their dedication and their commitment and their time. But I wonder what expertise the members of that committee have that we should be allowing them to make public health decisions for our schools. The Road Forward Committee recommendations go against the recommendations for schools of the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the New Jersey Department of Health at the very least. What accommodations will the district be making for students for whom school is no longer safe due to their own or their family's immunocompromised status? My little timey thing went away, just FYI. I don't want to cheat. Okay. So a few other things. I really appreciate the words and the perspectives of the teachers of the African American Studies course. I'm so excited for my children to take this course. And I also thank Ms. Stern for reminding us all that the course is the first step, because all of our K through 12, our social studies needs to be reviewed and revised to be up to date with the current historical research, as some of the comments tonight show is desperately needed. Thank you for making the effort to ensure all 3 middle schools are on the same schedule. Thank you, Ms. Stern, for clarifying that students will stay where they begin middle school. It was not clear before you asked. Student reps, I so appreciate their reports at every board meeting. And I really hope that we can empower our student reps to be a part of the conversation with the Board of Ed, more of a non-voting member of the Board of Ed instead of just a reporting voice. I hope we can bring them into the conversation more. Where am I? Okay. I agree with what Ms. Winters said, but I will add that in all of the middle school, it talks about the number of students versus the capacity of the students, but it doesn't talk about class size. And I agree with Ms. Winters, class size is a big thing. I think the community needs to see how those class size. I know it looks really bad that Rosa has so few, but I can tell you at the moment, and you guys know, Rosa is the highest class sizes. We have 30 plus regularly. And the elephant in the room, I hope that everybody at home could hear the crazy noises coming from the roof or inside the wall or whatever that was, because I really think it's the best advertisement for the bond that we could put out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll go once more to the line for Adrian Gittens.
Hi, stop me if I can't be heard. So I am thanking, first of all, everyone for participating in this meeting and for the opportunity to be heard. And I just wanted to chime in quickly, I think probably dovetailing off of what Angela McNeil said. I have 5 girls, 4 in the Cherry Hill School District right now, all the way up from a junior at East down to 3 at Bret Hart, and then a 2-year-old. So we'll be in the district for some time. I think have a vested interest in what happens with the redistricting process. And I wanted to chime in because I feel like a constituency that I haven't heard a lot of in these meetings is the Bret Hart / Woodcrest community, and specifically like the Woodcrest Willowdale developments. A lot of people have floated the concept of a neighborhood school. And for a family like us, we're basically right on the dividing line and equidistant between Bret Hart and Woodcrest. And my concern with multiple kids in this school district is that even though the elementary school redistricting, it sounds like will be done in parallel to some extent, if whatever happens with the middle schools is enacted first, even if it's decided alongside the elementary schools, I'm worried that we're going to be in a situation similar to what Angela said, where you have some kids who are at one school, other kids who are at another school. And when you have multiple children, that's just not a tenable proposition. So I wanted to, again, emphasize the importance of looking at the elementary schools alongside the middle schools. But also, if we really do want to move toward neighborhood schools and realize that concept, I've heard a few people say it's like one school that's facing challenges with that, but I think Bret Harte and Woodcrest are equally positioned where, it's much farther for us to go to Beck than it is for Rosa, whatever the administration decides it will be. But if that could be taken into account as well and have that perspective reflected, I think it'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the room.
Hello, I'm Diane Carr from Cherry Hill. Good evening, Board of Education members. My children are grown, so I'm speaking on behalf of parents of Cherry Hill students. And as a resident, as a taxpayer, as an educator, as a parent. I have to say, it is alarming to hear of the various issues parents today have to face in light of this unfortunate pandemic situation. Generally speaking, one would think that adults would want to do whatever they can to protect innocent ones from the harsh effects of the pandemic conversation, whether it is from the media, well-meaning family members or friends, or from what they're being exposed to in school, whether factual or not, concerning everything that has come in like a tornado into the lives of families and children, including your own, for yours are not excluded. Tornadoes come and destroy, scatter, and dishevel life. I'm speaking from the heart of a mother who loves her children more than life itself. What children are experiencing with all of this, what they are hearing and understanding, what they're being told contradicts what they need. What they need inside of themselves is what we need to be concerned about. Think about yourself when you were young. What did you need? Let me offer a few ideas. Sacrificial acceptance, gentleness, love, compassion, protection, humility by the adults in their lives. Has our world gone out of its mind in setting forth those things that oppose what children really need every day? I earnestly encourage you to put on humility in making the decisions, the difficult determinations that you have to do, that you must make as members of the Board of Education here in Cherry Hill. Let these be the guiding principles for all decision-making and not separation, for example, masked or unmasked, vaccinated or unvaccinated, which perturbs parents and students alike and doesn't give a sense of being unified toward these ideals during this distressing time or give the peace that families crave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to stay in the room.
Good evening, Nicole Nance, Cherry Hill resident. To that father, I'm hoping you've received a public apology from the Board of Education that your child had to go to through that abuse. I'm hoping that you've received that.
Ms. Nance, if you could address the Board of Education in your comments.
Okay, board, I'm hoping that you publicly apologize to that parent for his family having
Ms.
gone
Nance,
through that
thank you for your comments,
abuse.
but the Board of Education does not comment on personnel matters, and you're making an assumption here that should not be made. We're
No, I
not
didn't
gonna say
make, I
anything
asked a
further.
question.
Please address the board.
These are
with
my
your
public
specific
comments. You're taking up my time. Next, I do want to thank you, Dr. Maloche, for responding to my email about the ESSER funds. I would like to also ask that you please answer my question that was also in that email to all of you about the mask, about recessing a Board of Education meeting in a publicly funded building when masks are not put on all the way up to the nose, covering the mouth and the nose. What law states that you can recess a meeting that is in a building paid for with public tax dollars? Next, I agree mostly with the Road Forward Committee. I personally think you should unmask the kids completely. Next, the noise that took place during the meeting, whether we want to hear what each other has to, whether we agree with what each other has to say or not, for professional decorum reasons, that's not good. A lot of us back there really could not hear what was going on. It was muffled a lot. I mentioned it in the last board meeting. Sometimes when you all speak, it's not clear in the mic. You may not agree with what I'm saying. I may not agree with what you're saying, but I do at least have the right to hear it. I've taken the time to attend this meeting for hours, and so does everyone else. And I want to ask, do you include, and it's a question, not an assumption, I'm genuinely asking, do you include in the African American Studies curriculum anything about the historically speaking, what has been done to African American babies in certain organizations such as Planned Parenthood? Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to the line. We have Mindy next.
Hi, Mindy Rosen, Cherry Hill. I have a 3-minute speech prepared, but Jen Nadio said exactly what I was going to say and more. So I just want to say that I agree with everything that she said. I do worry about how option 2 will affect our special ed community. I have the same question as Mrs. Friedel asked about reading. And when Mrs. Mallory answered her about that it would be done at IEP meetings, I also question because I know that a lot of IEP meetings are already done. So that is problematic to me. I agree with Ann Einhorn and Lori Neary when they said, this is not a race to implement. And it makes me think about when you were making the name change of the administration building, and Mrs. Stern and Mrs. Tong asked for you to wait 1 month before you voted. And they were told no, and there still is no name change. So I really encourage you, do not rush into things, because we know what rushing into things, what happens when we rush into things in this district. So please take your time, think about redistricting elementary before middle schools, and please let the community know what the ramifications are for the special ed students in option 2. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll return in the room, sir.
Good evening. I hate to make myself loud, but I want to make sure you could hear me. I had no intentions of getting up and speaking, but I heard so many things that were being said by different people, people who had good intentions, but they're not following the science. There is no science that children who are not compromised in any way will get COVID to the point where they will really get sick and die. But a lot of people think that this is the case. That's not the case. They have to start to follow the science. And the science states that they'll get over it. It's like the flu. In the past, people got the flu. Some died because they had compromised bodies or pre-existing conditions or were grossly overweight, obese. But this is not the case with most children. And to require children to wear masks, I was an educator in Philadelphia for 40 years. My first class was 47 children, mixed races, all different nationalities. And all of my children were fine. They didn't get sick except from the common colds, but it built up their immune system. And I think that people who think that we have to wear masks constantly are avoiding certain educational principles. Children look at the face of people who speak to them. When you have a mask on, what do they see? Little children, especially, I taught kindergarten as well. They have to see your mouth the way you're speaking to them. And when I would raise my voice, they knew, I don't mean like this, but if I was angry at one of them, they knew to back off. Or if I smiled, it was a different feeling entirely. So I really think that we should follow the science and follow the government. I think the governor has said, I think March 7th is the day to remove the mask for people who desire to do so. And the rest of us should do what we feel is necessary for our children. If you want them to wear a mask, fine. But those of us who don't should not have to. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next return to the line for Lori Neary.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one quick comment, as I found it very interesting as everyone speaks regarding masks and how you feel, how you don't feel. I personally, it's up to everybody else how they feel. But it is interesting as everybody comments that children can't see the face, they can't interpret. My son said to me in the middle of the pandemic, you know, Mom, it's really interesting. Suddenly everyone knows what it's like to be me and what it's like to be autistic, and you can't interpret what everyone is thinking or saying. Suddenly the world just became very fair for him. So I would just like everybody to pause and think on that for a moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Meloche in a second. I just wanted to make one comment, which is that, you know, I want people, after a flurry of emails that I hope I answered everyone, perhaps I missed a few people, but I just want people to understand that though it didn't make it into this meeting tonight necessarily in terms of our decision-making as a board, the items being brought up by the community are very much items that have been brought up. In other words, this meeting doesn't exist in isolation with everything else we've said over the last months and years. You know, the idea that we're not taking into account something like class size, it's simply not true. You know, we have an administration. These are folks who do that. We have a year and a half to get to where we need to get to. And so I don't want people to feel like because we didn't say it tonight in this moment, that it's not something that's going to be pursued by our educational experts, and that it's top of mind for the board. I just think there's a piece of that that just, you know, just understand. I mean, there is a process. We are not at the end of that process. However, you know, we have made some decisions tonight that I hope, you know, people can, you know, can find some comfort in and continue to engage where maybe there are items still left to be considered. I just want to say that on behalf of this board. Hopefully the board doesn't fire me for saying it. We do want to clarify, several people have brought up busing, and we are going to have a clarification shortly. Well, look, the next time we get to this meeting, we will be, I suppose, mask optional. Believe me, it will please no one more than me not to have to recess. Believe me, these are long days, and I appreciate everyone's patience with following the law and executive orders and trying to navigate a bevy of changing and dynamic and interesting cases. So thank you for your patience and for your participation. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Meloche.
Thank you, Mr. Vadia. I did ask Mr. Green. For those of you that don't know, Mr. Green, Paul Green is the solicitor for the district. He represents us, the district, in legal interests. I'm going to ask him just to go and refer to the requirement for masking with transportation. Before he starts, I just also remind people that are watching, whether it's live or recorded, that the folks that speak, they are public opinions, right? It's not comments that are endorsed or supported by the board. These are all public opinions represented by each of the individuals who gets up to speak. So Mr. Green, if you talk about transportation, then I'll go through and address some of the questions and items that were brought up this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. I'd like to clarify the statement that President Biden's executive order of 12121 regarding public transportation is not applicable to school buses is correct, but that's not the end of the story. On January 29th, 2021, effective February 1st, 2021, the CDC adopted an order pursuant to their authority under 42 USC 264, which specifically provides that any persons on a conveyance must wear a mask over their mouth and nose when traveling on the conveyance. Conveyance is defined under 42 CFR 70.2 as including any road vehicle. And the CDC has made it expressly clear that this includes school buses. So it's not President Biden's executive order that's applying to the school buses, it's the CDC's order. And that's where the authority and the mandate is coming from. And until such time as the CDC rescinds that order, any transportation carriers, school transportation carriers must enforce that. And that's the public comment is closed. Public comment is closed, sir. Sir, the public comment is closed. And it is a mandate, by the CDC. And I'm not going to get into an argument with you. Public comment is closed. You're out of order. Stop. Stop. You're out of order. I'm not wrong. I am not wrong.
Hold on, guys, folks. Paul Green, who is our board solicitor, has said what Paul Green, our board solicitor, has said. If you disagree, there's a mechanism to engage with us, okay? It won't open back up, but the method to engage with us, we appreciate. To adjourn for the night? All right, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn for the evening. Do I have a second? Mrs. Arroyo, all in favor, say aye. Aye, we are adjourned.